Chapter 1323. Gu Beiyue lay on the bed. He was actually conscious, but he was so weak that he couldn't speak. Even if he had the urge to speak, he would want to cough. He didn't know how much Qin Min's acupuncture skills had improved in these 3 years. Just a few needles could actually suppress his coughing. Otherwise, he really didn't know how much torture he would have to endure this time. After the medical reform, he was waiting for Jin Zi's triumphant return from Winter Crow country, waiting for the emperor and the empress to officially enter the imperial capital and the palace. Then he would leave. Actually, there was no need for the empress to chase him away. He already had plans to rest. To be precise, he wanted to retire. Retire to a place where no one knew him and personally teach little Shadow Qinggong. He couldn't cure himself, but he was very clear about his condition. He could even estimate the time he had left. Little Shadow was so talented. He was confident that he could teach Little Shadow. Everything was in the plan, including his life. Qin Min was also part of the plan. However, he couldn't bear to do something that wasn't part of the plan. He couldn't figure it out. Thinking about it now, perhaps his sudden return tonight was also because of this unwillingness. Just as Shiyuba was about to be forced by Qin Min to reveal the truth about the Shadow clan, Gu Beiyue raised his hand with great effort and stopped Shiyuba. "Master is awake." Shiyuba was overjoyed. Qin Min hurried over and asked, "Gu Beiyue, how are you? Are you still not feeling well?" Gu Beiyue handed the divorce letter that he had been holding in his hand to Qin Min. Qin Min was stunned. She thought that he didn't want the divorce letter. However, when she took it and looked at it carefully, she saw a handprint on it. It was a bloody handprint that was especially clear. His left hand was stained with blood from his coughing, but his right hand, which had been holding the divorce letter, was clean. This handprint, when did he imprint it? This guy was about to die, but he didn't even bother to leave his handprint on the divorce letter? Qin Min didn't know whether she was angry or sad. She didn't hesitate to tear the divorce letter to shreds. She said angrily, "Gu Beiyue, I regret it. Unless you recover from your illness, I will never divorce you or leave you in this lifetime. If you want me to leave, you better get better quickly." Gu Beiyue slowly opened his eyes and looked at the angry Qin Min, shaking his head helplessly. Qin Min was about to explode from anger. Perhaps only anger could suppress the sadness in her heart. She angrily warned, "If you try shaking your head again, I'll write a letter right now to tell His Majesty and Her Majesty about this matter, as well as Mu Ling-er and the others. I want to tell everyone." As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Beiyue stopped. He didn't dare to shake his head again. This threat was very effective against him. He had been alone for many years. He had no clansmen or relatives. He only had that group of friends. The storms and waves had passed, and so had the hardships and difficulties. He did not want to break this hard-won period of peace and quiet. Seeing that Gu Beiyue did not move, Qin Min's anger subsided a little. However, once her anger subsided, her heart began to ache. Her heart felt as if it was being strangled. It hurt so much that she couldn't breathe. Most of the time, anger was not the real emotion but sadness. Anger was a form of concealment and a form of self-protection. Anger was outward, but sadness was hidden in the heart. When the anger gradually subsided, what was left was an unbearable pain. Qin Min said indifferently, "Uncle Shi, you can leave first. I want to talk to your master alone." Shiyuba still did not dare to be impudent and cast an inquiring look at his master. After Gu Beiyue's silent consent, Shiyuba left and closed the door. He didn't know what Qin Min and Gu Beiyue talked about. Anyway, it was not until the next morning when the first ray of sunlight shone into the courtyard that Qin Min opened the door and came out. She walked to the courtyard and raised her hands. She stretched her body and took in deep breaths of fresh air. Although the tears at the corners of her eyes were very obvious, her eyes were not as dim as last night. The sunlight still shone into her eyes and illuminated her entire being. After a while, she personally went to prepare breakfast. She left a portion for Little Shadow and brought the rest to Gu Beiyue's room. Gu Beiyue could already get out of bed. He was still the same as before. One could tell that his body was not well, but one could not tell that he had contracted a serious illness and would not live for long. When Qin Min came in, he was standing in front of the study table and picking up the air pineapple beside the inkstone. This was given to him by Qin Min years ago. He had left it here and had not taken care of it. Even though the air pineapple was rootless and did not need to be taken care of, it still needed to be taken care of. In the past 4 years, This air pineapple that was only the size of a child's palm had completely grown. It was as big as his palm, and a yellow flower sprouted from the center of the flower. It was not very beautiful, but it was very pleasing to the eye and had a special kind of beauty. Moreover, 2 small buds sprouted from the bottom of the flower as if it had given birth to 2 babies. In the past 4 years, it must have been Qin Min who had been protecting it. Otherwise, no matter how tenacious the flower was, it would still wither. Qin Min walked over with breakfast and said with a smile, "Be careful, don't drop the buds at the side. The 2 buds will fall off on their own in a few days and can survive on their own. Come and eat. From today onwards I'll take care of your 3 meals. However, you have to show some appreciation for the food expenses." "Okay." Gu Beiyue carefully put down the air pineapple and walked over to take a look. The breakfast that he had prepared for Qin Min had unexpectedly arrived. Qin Min spread a beige napkin on the table and the bowls and plates were light pink. The tableware was so exquisite that there was even a chopstick holder. She cooked a small pot of white rice porridge and seemed to have added some millet. There were specks of yellow in the porridge. She also made 4 side dishes: fish, eggs, and 2 vegetables. On a summer morning, such a light but not vegetarian breakfast coupled with elegant tableware was enough to whet one's appetite. At the very least, Gu Beiyue had not calmed down and had a slow breakfast for a long time. He usually finished his meal with a cup of water and a steamed bun. The 2 of them sat down. Gu Beiyue was still frowning slightly. Qin Min said seriously, "Grand Tutor Gu, if you keep this face of yours, our agreement will be voided." Last night she knew the secret of the Shadow Clan and the truth of his illness. The Shadow Clan had been passed down from generation to generation. Only his grandfather was an exception, but he only lived to his early 40s. His father only lived to the age of 25. His ancestors had a strange illness that was passed down from generation to generation. Almost no one was spared. They could only use medicinal baths to nourish their bodies and delay time as much as possible. In the end, the coughing would not stop and the person would be coughed to death. He had always suspected that his father was not coughed to death, but that his grandfather had personally taken his life to avoid the final pain. Last night, Qin Min was very insistent. She said, "I'll leave when you recover." Only then did he tell her the truth. He said, "You can't wait for me to recover. You have nothing to do with illness or life and death. You just have to leave." At that moment she cried. Looking at him she cried. She said, "Gu Beiyue, can I cling to you? I won't cling to you for too long, just 5 years. If you really can't recover, I'll leave. If you recover, I'll leave too." He refused. "Oh," she threatened, "unless you kill me to silence me, you'll definitely regret it." He was silent for a full 2 hours. She didn't say a word and didn't rush him. He just waited. In the end he still compromised. He handed her a small golden knife and said to her very seriously, "Be prepared to kill me and I'll agree." She took the small golden knife without hesitation and said, "Okay. Gu Beiyue, from now on you are my patient. Your life and death are related to me." That was how the 5-year agreement was made. It had nothing to do with love or life and death. Qin Min convinced herself. Seeing that Gu Beiyue still wasn't eating, she personally handed it to him. "Grand Tutor Gu, mental treatment is better than medicinal treatment. You should understand. Be happy. I'm not really pestering you, so what are you worried about? Come to me on time for 3 meals a day and take a medicinal bath for 2 hours in the morning. The rest of the time is yours. Also, you can call me Dr. Qin in the future." Looking at Qin Min's smiling face, Gu Beiyue's lips finally curled into a faint smile. He picked up his chopsticks. After taking a sip of the porridge, his calm expression changed to surprise and surprise. He never expected Qin Min's culinary skills to be so good that even the porridge was so fragrant. "Try the side dishes and see if they're to your taste," Qin Min said. Gu Beiyue still gave her face and tasted all the dishes. "Dr. Qin's culinary skills are excellent. I'll have a good meal in the future." Qin Min smiled. "Then eat more." Gu Beiyue thought that she would say something else, but Qin Min didn't say much and only ate quietly. After the meal, Qin Min went to the medicinal bath. Gu Beiyue went to look for Little Shadow. Little Shadow was 5 years old and was about to mature. He had to personally teach Little Shadow martial arts. Perhaps it was because of Qin Min's daily teachings, or maybe it was because of the 2 letters they exchanged every month. But Little Shadow didn't feel unfamiliar with his father even though he hadn't seen him for 3 years. In addition, Gu Beiyue was gentle and patient. After a few days the two of them were as close as father and son. The days passed like this. Gu Beiyue spent all his time with Little Shadow other than eating with Qin Min and taking a medicinal bath for 2 hours in the morning. As for Qin Min, other than personally cooking and helping Gu Beiyue with food therapy, she spent the rest of her time on medicinal baths and acupuncture. She asked about Gu Beiyue's condition, including the development of his illness since he was young. She hoped to find a way to combine medicinal baths and acupuncture. She used the mealtime to discuss with Gu Beiyue and never delayed his other time. As for Gu Beiyue taking medicinal baths for the past 3 years, Gu Beiyue didn't mention it again, so Qin Min misunderstood. At the beginning of autumn, several pieces of good news came from the north. Jin Zi conquered the last stone city of Wintercrow Country and took over the entire country. He stationed his troops at the border fortress and planned to spend the winter in Wintercrow Country with Mu Linger before triumphantly returning to the south. The only regret was that Jin Zi didn't catch the biggest slave trader in Wintercrow Country, Lu Zheng. Lu Zheng and his gang all ran away to the mysterious continent. It must be mentioned that last winter Mu Linger gave birth to a daughter for Jin Zi. Jin Zi very willfully named his daughter Jin Ling, using the Jin in his name and the Ling in Mu Linger's name. In Han Yunqi's words, he's afraid that the world doesn't know that Mu Linger gave birth to the baby for him. Therefore Mu Linger was promoted to Big Linge, and little Jin Ling was called Little Linge. Another piece of good news was that the construction of the imperial capital was completed. The ministers in the imperial court recommended many fortune tellers, hoping to divine an auspicious day for the emperor and empress to officially move into the imperial palace in the imperial capital. However, Long Fei Yi picked a day himself, which was the Mid-Autumn Festival. There was still more than half a month to the Mid-Autumn Festival. On this day Gu Beiyue finished his breakfast and said to Qin Min, "Pack up. Tomorrow we'll go north and return to the imperial capital." Mo has something to say. A new peripheral gift was made. It's very beautiful. Follow Mo's WeChat account and you can participate in the gift. The event will start tomorrow. Search Mo's WeChat account, Gmomo 2015 or GMO, to follow. Chapter 1324. The Great Qin's imperial capital was built on the foundation of Tianing country's former imperial capital. Only the Chongding Palace, where Long Fei Yi had lived when he was young, was preserved. Everything else had been razed. Not only was the Chongding Palace preserved, but it had also been expanded into a sizable residence. Even Tang Zijin, who was in charge of building the capital, didn't know why the emperor had left the Chongding Palace behind. Before Princess Yan was born, the commoners in the imperial city said that the emperor had left this palace for the second prince. After all, apart from the crown prince, the other princes couldn't live in the palace after reaching adulthood. However, once Princess Yan was born, the commoners' rumors changed. They said that the emperor had left this palace for the princess and that it would become a shrewd princess residence in the future. The Great Qin Imperial Palace was built on the old site of the Duke of Qin's residence. The new palace took up much of the old palace's land. The entire palace was oriented from north to south, with the Yonghe Gate in the middle dividing the palace into two. North of the Yonghe Gate was the inner palace, while south of the Yonghe Gate was the outer court. In the center of the outer court was the Tianxian Hall, where the emperor held court and dealt with state affairs. On either side of the Tianxian Hall were the Internal Affairs Department, which was in charge of internal affairs, the Imperial Library, which was in charge of the Imperial Library, and so on. The inner palace was where the imperial family lived. The old site of the Duke of Qin's residence was located in the inner palace, and it had been rebuilt into the leisurely Cloud Palace. Other places in the Duke of Qin's residence had been renovated, but Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi's hibiscus garden hadn't been touched. Long Fei Yi's sleeping quarters and Han Yunqi's leisurely cloud pavilion were still the same. Even the poisonous plants that Han Yunqi had planted in the courtyard were still alive and well. Apart from the leisurely Cloud Palace, there were a few other palaces in the inner palace, all of which were currently empty. There were many rumors about the future owners of these palaces. However, the smart ones knew that these palaces were basically empty. In the early years, there were still people who would advise Long Fei Yi to select concubines so that the imperial family could procreate as soon as possible. However, in the past 2 years, no one dared to mention this matter. That was because most of the people who tried to persuade him didn't end up well. The smarter ones had already given up on the position of Gui Fei and started to think about the crown princess and the emperor's son-in-law. However, this matter seemed to be more difficult than having the emperor take a concubine. The crown prince was almost 5 years old. Under the guidance of the emperor and empress, and the assistance of Grand Tutor Gu Beiyue, his intelligence was far superior to his peers. Most importantly, he had inherited his father emperor's temperament, steady and taciturn. Not to mention understanding his thoughts, it was difficult to even talk to him face to face. Thus, the common people of the imperial city who didn't care about state affairs but loved to care about the gossip of the imperial family, had a new guess. They said that in the future the crown prince would definitely be like His Highness Duke of Qin in the past, forced to marry. Otherwise, no family's daughter would be able to enter his eyes. As a result, the group of nobles, civil and military officials all set their sights on the position of Prince Consort. Helpless, they quickly gave up. The emperor's protection of the princess was simply to the point of making people speechless. Until now, the number of people who had seen the princess's true face could be counted on one hand. As a result, whether it was the crown princess or the emperor's son-in-law, the final decision was still in the hands of the emperor. Everyone busied themselves and circled around before finally discovering that the most effective method was to curry favor with the emperor. The harem was very large, but until now only 4 masters lived in it. Even the number of servants and eunuchs were not many, and the number of imperial bodyguards were also uncommon. However, everyone knew that intruders would only have one path: death. The imperial city was divided into the inner city and the outer city. Those who lived in the inner city were the nobles and high-ranking officials. Gu's Prince Yu residence, Gu Beiyue's Grand Tutor's residence, Tang Li's residence and Jin Zi's residence were all in the inner city. Those who lived in the outer city were the common people. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi officially entered the imperial palace on the 15th day of the 8th month. However, they had arrived at the imperial city a few days earlier. Before entering the imperial palace, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had to attend many memorial ceremonies. On the morning of the 15th day of the 8th month, Long Fei Yi held his first morning court assembly in the Sky Profound Hall. After the morning court assembly, he immediately headed to the harem after dealing with the government affairs of the day. As for whether he was in a hurry to accompany the empress or his little princess, only the empress would know. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min arrived at the imperial city in the afternoon of the same day. Qin Min and Little Shadow were shocked as they did not expect the Grand Tutor's residence to be such a large residence. And when they entered the door, they were shocked again. Although the residence occupied a large area, there were only 2 courtyards in the residence, a large courtyard and a small courtyard. The large courtyard was the living quarters, while the small courtyard was the study and library. The rest of the land was empty. "You two rest, I will make a trip to the palace," Gu Beiyue said faintly. "Dinner is up to you, just don't come back too late," Qin Min said seriously. She knew that his vacation was over and he would be busy in the imperial city. It was not appropriate to restrict him from coming back for 3 meals. However, the medicinal bath could not be interrupted. They could have arrived 10 days ago from Ningzhou, but he insisted on following the route she had chosen. Every day he was guaranteed to stay overnight at the inn. In this way, Little Shadow would be able to eat a hot meal every day and Gu Beiyue would be able to take a medicinal bath every night. Gu Beiyue did not object and went along with her wishes. The two of them were less polite and distant than before, but they were not close either. They just communicated less than before. However, as long as she asked for something, Gu Beiyue would agree. Gu Beiyue nodded. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly turned his head to look to the right. Soon Little Shadow also noticed the movement on the roof to the right. "Daddy, there is someone," Little Shadow said in a low voice. "Go." As soon as Gu Beiyue finished speaking, Little Shadow flew to the roof. These days, under Gu Beiyue's personal guidance, Little Shadow's qigong improved rapidly. Gu Beiyue already knew that Little Shadow was talented, but the talent that Little Shadow continuously displayed still surprised him. The most commendable thing was that Little Shadow was not only talented, but also very diligent and never arrogant. Little Shadow chased after Little Shadow, and the guards who were hiding in the surroundings also followed from all directions. Gu Beiyue stood beside Qin Min and did not move. Seeing Little Shadow's figure disappear into the other side of the roof, Qin Min was worried. Will it be dangerous? Don't worry. Gu Beiyue said seriously. In the residence and at this distance, no matter who came, he could still guarantee Little Shadow's safety. Although Little Shadow had been practicing martial arts since he was young, he was 5 years old and had not yet competed with others. He did not understand the sinister nature of people's hearts. Gu Beiyue had already decided to send Little Shadow into the Jianghu next year, and let him experience the world on his own. Soon, a guard returned and reported in a low voice, "Master, His Highness the Crown Prince is here." Whether it was the title of His Highness the Crown Prince, or the identity of Long Fei Ye's son, it was enough to make people nervous. That child was too honorable. Qin Min was nervous not for herself but for Little Shadow. She was afraid that Little Shadow would trouble the Crown Prince. Suddenly Little Shadow's figure appeared on the roof again and flew up. Soon a black figure chased after him. Although his speed was not as fast as Little Shadow, his aura was very impressive. Little Shadow landed on a nearby roof. Before he could steady himself, the black-clothed child chased after him and also landed on the roof. Just as Little Shadow was about to speak, the black-clothed child struck out with a palm. The palm wind was strong and it blew Little Shadow's hair up. Shadow! From Qin Min's position she could only see the back of the black-clothed child. She could only see the black-clothed child's palm, but not Little Shadow's situation. Qin Min was so scared that her heart almost stopped. But who knew that Little River tilted his head and smiled at Qin Min. "Mother, don't be afraid. His Highness the Crown Prince is merciful." This black-clothed child was of course the current Crown Prince Xianyuan Rui. Although he was only 4.5 years old, half a year younger than Little Shadow, he was taller than Little Shadow. His qigong was not as good as Little Shadow's, but his martial arts were far superior. Since he was 3 years old, he had been learning martial arts from his grandfather Han Qin, every year for about 3 months. So far he had learned 3 times. He had just rushed back from Feng Mingshan's palace. Little Shadow smiled at his mother and quickly stood up straight. He raised his hands and bowed. "Gu Nanshan pays his respects to His Highness the Crown Prince." "How do you know who I am?" Xianyuan Rui asked. He had just been practicing. When he heard that Tai Fu had returned, he rushed over without changing his clothes. This simple black outfit was a training outfit. "Because the guards beside me just now all ran away." Little Shadow answered seriously. Xianyuan Rui looked Little Shadow up and down and praised, "Qigong is excellent." Little Shadow immediately bowed again and smiled, "Your Highness is too kind." Xianyuan Rui raised his eyebrows and looked at Little Shadow with surprise. He did not speak again. Little Shadow was not flustered, nor was he curious. He let Xianyuan Rui look him up and down. He maintained his smile as calm as a little monk. Xianyuan Rui was secretly pondering a question: how can this Little Shadow be a mistress? His personality is so similar to Tai Fu Gu's. Little Shadow kept smiling slightly warm and beautiful. Xianyuan Rui felt uncomfortable. There had never been a peer who dared to look at him like this, smiling at him for so long. He first avoided Little Shadow's line of sight and turned around. When Xianyuan Rui turned around, Qin Min, Xiaoyao and the wet nurse were all shocked. What a celestial face this was. Half of it was like the Emperor, but it had its own edge, spirit and nobility. Only 4 years old. Although he was still immature, one could see the heroic spirit between his brows. And that pair of pitch-black eyes contained an innate indifference and mystery. People could not help but want to look through time, through the years, to see him after he grew up. How deep those eyes would be, how enchanting. Xianyuan Rui flew to the roof and landed in front of Gu Beiyue. He respectfully bowed to him, Tai Fu. In terms of status, Xianyuan Rui was the master and Gu Beiyue was the subject. But as Tai Fu, Gu Beiyue was Xianyuan Rui's teacher. Gu Beiyue could accept this bow. It was rare that Xianyuan Rui, the crown prince of the empire, could be so willing, so respectfully bowed. "Your Highness." Gu Beiyue also bowed. "Your Highness" was a proper address. In the past it was given to the emperor, but now it was given to the young master. After the 2 people bowed, Qin Min was about to bow, but who knew that Xianyuan Rui would look at her and also bow, "Mrs. Qin." Qin Min was Tai Fu's wife, his teacher's wife. Strictly speaking, she was his teacher's wife. Xianyuan Rui's bow was not respectful, nor was it polite. Although he had bowed, he still gave people a sense of superiority and nobility. This bow was due to upbringing. Chapter 1325. Qin Min hurriedly returned the greeting. She didn't know if it was because of his status as the crown prince, but she couldn't treat this child who wasn't even 5 years old as a child. She didn't know if it was because there were too many people or because Rufer had grown up. When he was young, he liked to be close to Gu Beiyue. Now he wasn't clingy. He said, "Grand Tutor, Imperial Father and Imperial Mother know that you're back and will host a banquet in the palace tonight to welcome you. Please thank His Majesty and Her Majesty on my behalf," Gu Beiyue said seriously. Ru hesitated, his gaze drifting to the little shadow at the side. He asked, "Grand Tutor, can I borrow that doll?" That doll? He was clearly smaller than the little shadow. What did he want to do? Qin Min was nervous again. The little shadow seemed to have heard the crown prince talking about him. He flew down with a confused expression. "What does your highness want the shadow for?" Gu Beiyue asked. "Practice with me. If he runs, I'll chase. If I run, he can chase." Said seriously. Qin Min's heart finally settled. At the same time, she noticed that the crown prince seemed polite to Gu Beiyue, but was actually very close. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used such a tone of discussion. Gu Beiyue seemed polite to the crown prince but was actually very close. He must have treated the crown prince as both a young master and a child. He didn't order the shadow forcefully but asked gently, "Shadow, do you want to practice with His Highness?" The shadow grinned. "Yes. Your Highness, the shadow's qigong is good but his martial arts aren't." Before Gu Beiyue could finish, Ru interrupted, "Don't worry, I won't hurt him." The little shadow smiled happily. Seeing the crown prince turn and leave, he hurriedly pulled his father down and whispered in his ear, "Father, don't worry. I was going easy on His Highness just now. I can run faster. If I want to protect His Highness in the future, I have to make sure His Highness can't catch me." Gu Beiyue was a little surprised, but still rubbed his little head and said gently, "Go." It was only after the two children had walked far away that Qin Min spoke. "Grand Tutor Gu, a few days ago, Shadow asked me what the Shadow clan's protection meant. I thought you had already told him." Everyone knew that the Shadow clan's protection was to use their lives to protect their master. She had always thought that Gu Beiyue would tell Little Shadow everything before he started teaching Little Shadow Kung Fu. He would let Little Shadow Kung Fu inherit his heavy responsibility. However, Gu Beiyue had yet to say anything. He should have said it earlier. Why didn't he say it until now? Would he not have the heart to do that? Qin Min faintly said, "I told Little Shadow that the Shadow clan's mission is to protect the imperial family. Am I right?" "Yes." Gu Beiyue nodded and did not explain further. Qin Min didn't talk about it anymore. Gu Beiyue had originally wanted to go to the palace to report to the emperor, but now that he knew there would be a banquet tonight, he stayed in the residence. Qin Min instructed the servants to brew medicinal soup for Gu Beiyue to soak in. She brought Xiaoyao with her and walked around the residence. Then she wrote down a list of the seeds of several flowers and had Xiaoyao buy them. It was a pity that such a large courtyard was abandoned. Of course, she had to make good use of it. At night, Little Shadow was brought to the palace by Ruher in advance. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min entered the palace alone. The 15th day of the 8th lunar month was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Family banquets were held to admire the moon, drink wine and compose poems. Every courtyard in the capital was very lively. Qin Min alighted from the carriage and looked up to see the bright moon in the sky. The moonlight was so bright that it was enough to illuminate the entire world at night. However, it was precisely because of its brightness that it overshadowed the light of the stars that it was destined to be lonely. "Grand Tutor Gu, did you notice that you can't see the stars on the 15th day of the 8th lunar month?" Qin Min muttered unconsciously. She still didn't know that Gu Beiyue's birthday was the 15th day of the 8th lunar month. She also didn't know that his real name was Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue looked up and didn't comment. He only said mildly, "Let's go. Don't let His Majesty and Her Majesty wait too long." Qin Min followed him deep into the palace. On the way she said, "But fortunately the full moon is only the 15th or 16th day. The moon always waxes and wanes and the stars can also be dazzling." Gu Beiyue only grunted in acknowledgement. He lowered his head and walked quickly with the palace maid who led the way. The Mid-Autumn Festival banquet was held in the pavilion of the Imperial Study. When Gu Beiyue and Qin Min arrived, Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi were already waiting. There was no crown prince Ru or young master Yan. It was just the husband and wife. They didn't know what to talk about. Han Yunxi chatted and laughed. Long Feiyi also smiled. When Gu Beiyue and Qin Min arrived, Gu Beiyue was about to leave when Han Yunxi stopped him. Gu Beiyue, this is the Mid-Autumn Festival family banquet. If you're going to be so polite, leave Qin Min here and leave the palace yourself. Qin Min said. Without Gu Beiyue's permission, Qin Min didn't dare to be rude. Thank you, His Majesty and Her Majesty. Gu Beiyue still bowed. He didn't know if he couldn't change this habit or if he didn't want to. Qin Min naturally thanked him. Han Yunxi rolled her eyes at Gu Beiyue. Long Feiyi only glanced at him, then turned his head and asked in a low voice, "Is the princess awake?" "Not yet. Granny Zhao is keeping watch. I've already told her to bring the princess over as soon as she wakes up." The palace maid replied in a low voice. "It's windy outside. Tell Granny Zhao to give the princess more clothes so that she won't catch a cold." Long Feiyi said seriously. "Yes." Just as the palace maid was about to leave, Long Feiyi added, "The princess likes to eat porridge at this time. Is it ready?" "It's ready. It's fish porridge." The palace maid replied. Long Feiyi asked a few more small things before letting the palace maid leave. Although Long Fei spoke in a low voice and the court lady's reply was just as low, everyone present still heard them. Qin Min was very surprised. Although she knew that this master liked his daughter, she didn't expect him to dote on her to this extent. He was simply personally worrying about every small matter. Qin Min subconsciously looked at Han Yunxi. She saw Han Yunxi drooping her head, looking very disappointed. Gu Beiyue wasn't surprised. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, is the princess doing well?" Long Feiyi had been paying attention to the little princess ever since Ru's accident when he was young. He had discussed it with Gu Beiyue several times. Now the little princess was about 2 years old. Other than the strange phenomenon of hundreds of birds greeting her when she was born, everything else was normal. When Han Qin heard about the birds greeting her, he was also very surprised. He only guessed that it might have something to do with the power of the phoenix, but it was only a guess. After all, Han Qin didn't fully understand the power of the phoenix. They didn't find any power in the little princess, so it was more likely that Han Yunxi lost control of the power of the phoenix in her body when she was giving birth. It was all exposed and attracted the birds. After all, Han Yunxi hadn't been idle after giving birth to Ru. She had been cultivating all this time. When she was pregnant with the little princess, the power of the phoenix in her body had been completely activated and controlled. Of course, Long Feiyi's love for the little princess wasn't because of the phenomenon of hundreds of birds greeting her. Even if the little princess was ordinary, he still doted on her like a treasure in his hands. God knows how long he had been waiting for a daughter. The usually serious person immediately smiled faintly when he talked about his daughter. He replied, "Everything is fine." Gu Beiyue and Long Feiyi chatted and talked about official matters. Han Yunxi pulled Qin Min aside and chatted with her. She asked Gu Beiyue in a low voice if he was taking good care of his body. After chatting, Qin Min found out that it was Han Yunxi who chased Gu Beiyue away from the imperial capital. He's been taking good care of himself. His complexion has improved a lot recently, Qin Min replied in a low voice. Perhaps if she continued to ask, she would find out that Gu Beiyue had already left Ningzhou. Unfortunately, she didn't ask further. When the herbs were all ready, Han Yunxi called Su Donglin over and said, "Go find Ru and Little Shadow. They've been running around all day. It's time to eat." Before Ru and Little Shadow arrived, the little princess arrived first. She walked over carefully with a doll in her arms. The doll was wrapped tightly in a purple fox fur robe and even had a hood over it. She couldn't even tell if the doll was a boy or a girl, let alone its face. Han Yunxi lowered her head and didn't even bother to look at it. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min were both curious. They looked on in astonishment. It was only mid-autumn. She didn't have to be wrapped up like this, right? Granny Zhao placed the little one in the emperor's arms and retreated with a smile. Long Feiyi hugged his daughter and smiled. "Yan, our grand tutor, and Madame Qin are here. Take a look." The little one didn't move and didn't make a sound. Long Feiyi's lips curled into a smile and scratched the little one's armpit. Unexpectedly, the little one still didn't move. Long Fei was shocked. Long Fei pulled down the fox fur hood and saw that the little princess's eyes were tightly shut, as if she had lost consciousness. Long Fei was shocked and panicked for a moment. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min stood up almost at the same time and rushed over. However, Qin Min quickly moved aside. Gu Beiyue hurriedly took the little princess's pulse. However, once he felt it, Gu Beiyue frowned. What's going on? Long Fei was so anxious that his face turned pale. He didn't notice that Han Yunqi was sitting at the side and drinking soup leisurely. Her pulse is normal. How can this be? Gu Beiyue couldn't explain it for a moment. He felt the little princess's pulse and seriously pondered. Unexpectedly, the little princess suddenly opened her mouth and asked in a serious tone, "Dr. Gu, you can tell from my pulse. Am I suffocating to death?" The little princess learned to speak early. Now that she was 2 years old, she enunciated clearly and her voice was as clear as a bell with a hint of immaturity. This voice, coupled with this serious joke, gave people a mischievous feeling. Gu Beiyue was stunned. He looked carefully and realized that the little princess was wearing a thick cotton-padded jacket. He suddenly laughed out loud. Qin Min quickly understood what was going on and burst into laughter as well. She carefully looked at the little princess's face and found that the little princess was as delicate as a jade doll. She was pink and carved from jade, beautiful and cute. The way she looked with her eyes closed made people not have the heart to touch her, for fear that they would break her. Long Fei only realized then that he had been easily fooled by his daughter. He looked at his daughter who still hadn't opened her eyes. He was amused and curious, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Many times he really couldn't do anything to Han Yunqi. However, when it came to this daughter of his, there were many times that he could do nothing to her, but he was willing to be helpless. "Dr. Gu, please do a good deed and prescribe me some medicine. Otherwise, I won't be able to wake up," the little princess said seriously again. Gu Beiyue smiled and asked, "What medicine does your highness need?" "I need some medicine to convince my father not to wrap me up like a bun. I don't want to be a bun." As the little princess spoke, she opened her big eyes and looked pitifully at Long Fei. "Father, I have rashes again." Chapter 1326. The capital was located in the south-central regions of Cloud Realm continent. Although the weather was cold during mid-autumn, it wasn't enough to require people to wear cotton-padded jackets. Princess Yen not only wore cotton-padded jackets, but a fox fur coat as well. It'd be strange if she didn't get heat rashes. Long Fei was so afraid of Princess Yen catching a cold because she'd caught a severe cold when she was 1 year old because she wore too little. That was the first time she'd ever taken medicine in her life. Every time she'd had to force medicine down her throat and choked on it a few times. Moreover, fourth young Miss Ren was very careful with her prescriptions, so she recovered slowly and took a long time to take medicine. Over the past few days, Long Fei had almost gone crazy. At first, when fourth young Miss Ren and Zhao Mama forced medicine down Princess Yan's throat, Long Fei would watch from the side. Later on, he couldn't bear to watch and simply waited outside the door. However, it was precisely because he had left that fourth young Miss Ren and Granny Zhao were able to pour the medicine down her throat much more quickly, and she no longer choked. After that, Long Fei was especially afraid that his precious daughter would catch a cold again. His main concern was whether Princess Yen was wearing warm clothes. In other words, Princess Yen had already gotten heat rashes multiple times. Fourth young Miss Ren, Zhao Mama, and a group of experienced wet nurses were all watching over Princess Yen. Logically speaking, they should be able to persuade Long Fei, but none of them dared to say much. According to fourth young Miss Ren, it was common for children to catch cold. If they said too much and Princess Yen caught it again, they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences of the emperor's wrath. People outside the palace might not know how much the emperor doted on the little princess, but they were the ones who served him all day long. Thus, Zhao Mama found the empress to explain the situation so she could persuade the emperor. Zhao Mama said, "Esteemed empress, His Majesty listens to you the most. Please persuade him otherwise. If he keeps stuffy, he'll definitely get heat rashes." Han Yunqi said, "His Majesty listens to the little princess the most. When she gets heat rashes a few more times, she'll rebel on her own." As expected, Princess Yen rebelled in front of Gu Beiyue tonight. When Long Fei couldn't tickle Yen, Han Yunxi knew that Yen-er was doing it on purpose. So she couldn't be bothered with her. Long Fei Yi became anxious when he heard that Yen-er had rashes. Where is it? Pie's stomach. Yen-er said as she lifted her clothes. Long Fei Yi's face darkened even though he had told Yen-er several times not to lift her clothes and roll up her sleeves. However, Yen-er was still too young and would often forget. As they played, they either took off their shoes and socks or rolled up their sleeves high up in the air. Long Fei Yi hurriedly held Yen-er's hand and ordered someone to call forth young Miss Ren over. Qin Min is here. Let's not look for fourth Miss Ren, Han Yunxi said. She was about to carry Yen-er to apply the medicine when Yen-er stopped her and said seriously, Imperial Mother, I have something important to say to Dr. Gu. It's more important than rashes. Then hurry up and say it. Once you're done, go and apply the medicine, Han Yunxi replied. Long Fei Yi was very curious. Who knew that Yen-er would also say, Dr. Gu, please persuade my father now. Tell him not to be afraid that I'll catch a cold. I'm not that weak. Even my brother laughs at me. Yen-er even stretched out her hand. Dr. Gu, why don't you take my pulse? Fourth young Miss Ren said that my body is very healthy. I won't get sick easily. Just like that, Yen-er sat in her father's arms, completely ignoring him and talking to Gu Beiyue non-stop. Other than feeling awkward, Long Fei Yi felt even more awkward. Han Yunxi sat back down and drank her soup leisurely. Occasionally, she would look up at Long Fei Yi and laugh silently when she saw his awkward expression. He was especially happy. Yen-er, that little spirit was quite smart. She knew to complain to Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue kept a smile on his face as he listened attentively. At the side, Qin Min was very puzzled. Long Fei Yi was a man of few words and Han Yunxi wasn't a talkative person either. How did they give birth to such a talkative daughter? She was comparable to the eldest young miss of the Tang sect. However, Princess Yan's childish voice was very pleasant to the ears. She even spoke with pauses like a little adult. No matter how much she said, it didn't annoy the ears. While Yen-er was complaining, Ru-er and little Ing-er had silently landed on the roof of the pavilion. The two of them leaned on the roof and looked down through the cracks of the glazed tiles. Of course, Ru covered his ears the entire time. From the moment his sister learned to speak, Tang Hongdo was no longer the most terrifying existence to him. The sister was. Little Ing-er listened attentively to Princess Yan's words, not missing a single word. He listened and laughed. After listening for a while, little Ing asked, Your Highness, the princess is also someone I have to protect, right? Looked up and saw that little Ing was still lying on the roof. He pulled little Ing's head up and asked, Also? Who else do you have to protect? Little Ing snickered. You, immediately let go of his head and stood up. He looked down at little Ing and asked, You want to protect me? Little Ing hurriedly got up and said seriously, Yes. The Shadow Clan's mission is to protect the imperial family. Ru snorted. You only know how to run. How can you protect me? Little Ing said seriously, Your Highness, I can help you escape. As soon as he said this, Ru immediately fell and almost rolled off the roof. After he got up, he pointed a finger at little Ying's head and said word by word, Gu Nanshan, don't tell anyone that I know you. After he said this, he continued lying on the roof. Little Ing muttered, Your Highness, everyone knows that we know each other. After they left the Grand Tutor's residence, they went straight to the palace. The two of them ran around the palace the entire afternoon. Either he ran after His Highness or His Highness ran after him. They ran all over the palace in one afternoon. Everyone in the palace, including the Shadow Guard, knew that he was Grand Tutor Gu's son and was going to be His Highness's sparring partner. It was His Highness who told Su Donglin personally. His original words were especially domineering. Guard Su, inform everyone that this guy will be my man from now on. Anyone who blocks his way will be blocking my way. Ru looked up and asked seriously, Gu Nanshan, what's the point of running away? Little Ing crouched down as well and said, Your Highness, it's a great skill to be able to stay alive without hurting others. Ru asked again, What's the use if you can't deal with the enemy? Little Ing quickly said, You can anger the enemy to death. Just like His Highness, weren't you angry when you couldn't catch me this afternoon? Ru banged his head against the roof and didn't want to talk to little Ing anymore. This brat didn't even need to run away to anger someone to death with a few words. Little Ing smiled faintly and went back to reading the book. Lil Thing curled up on the side and looked at them lazily. Like Lil Thing was afraid of the little princess. Ever since the little princess picked it up, His Highness Crown Prince wasn't the most terrifying existence. At most, the little prince chased it around and wanted it to change. But the little princess kept a cat. It wasn't even afraid of tigers but cats. Every time the little princess held a cat in one hand and beckoned it over with the other, it would feel like it was really a mouse. It had accompanied the gentleman all over Cloud Realm continent until the medical reform ended. Then the gentleman suddenly left a few days after returning to Yuning, leaving Lil Thing nowhere to find him. Because the little princess kept pestering it, it stayed in Yuning until it went back to the capital with Mama Yunshi and the rest. Tonight it finally saw the gentleman. Lil Thing waited quietly until the banquet ended before sneaking back home with the gentleman. Inside the pavilion, Yenner had just finished complaining. Long Fei Yi felt awkward but allowed his daughter to talk and talk. He didn't like to talk nor did he like noisy people, but he loved to listen to his daughter talk non-stop. The awkwardness only lasted for a moment. As he listened, not only did he not feel awkward, he even laughed. Long Fei Yi was still worried about Yenner's rash, so he cut her off. Alright. Imperial father won't make you wear so many clothes in the future, alright? Hurry and apply some medicine. Pinky swear. Yenner said seriously. Long Fei Yi extended his pinky without hesitation, but Yenner only said, Imperial father, pinky swear with Dr. Gu. Qin Min covered her mouth in time, or else she would have spat out the soup in her mouth. Long Fei Yi's expression stiffened, while Gu Beiyue's smile froze as well. Only Han Yunshi didn't have much of a reaction. She knew her daughter's temper and thoughts better than Long Fei Yi. But Long Fei Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yenner replied seriously, Pinky swear between adults and children is a lie. Pinky swear between adults is a contract that can't be broken. Long Fei Yi thought it over, then said, I'll pinky swear with your imperial mother, alright? Yenner shook her head. Pinky swear between men and women is also a lie. Pinky swear between men is a contract between men that can't be broken easily. As soon as she said this, Han Yunshi spat out the soup in her mouth. She really didn't expect her daughter to say something like this. This girl had been doing this since she was 2 years old. Who taught you that? Han Yunshi asked. Yenner was very serious. Imperial mother, I can't betray master. Han Yunshi wanted to ask more, but Yenner urged her imperial father. Imperial father, I knew you were lying. Long Fei Yi felt helpless. He looked at Gu Beiyue, but Gu Beiyue also shook his head helplessly. In the end, it was Gu Beiyue who extended his pinky first. Long Fei Yi also extended his pinky. The two touched and immediately let go. Yenner was very satisfied. Before her imperial mother could come over to hug her, she slipped out of her imperial father's arms and rushed to the room at the side. It was so itchy. When Han Yunshi and Qin Min chased into the room, they both burst out laughing when they saw the scene in front of them. They saw Yenner leaning against the pillar and rubbing against it with all her might. Han Yunshi carried her to the couch and lifted her clothes to see a small red rash on her back. Qin Min took a look and said, Your Imperial Majesty, it's not a problem. Is the medicine that you applied before still here? Granny Zhao had already rushed over with the medicine. Anyone with experience would know that this was just a small matter. It was just that Long Fei Yi was making a fuss about nothing and wanted to call a doctor. Han Yunshi asked Qin Min to come over with her to reassure Long Fei Yi. Qin Min sniffed the medicine and said, Your Imperial Majesty, this is tea oil, right? Yes, fourth young Miss Rin gave it to me previously, Han Yunshi replied. Chapter 1327. Qin Min took out a small medicine bottle and smiled. Your Majesty, this is coconut oil. It's more effective and tastes better than tea oil. Apply this. Han Yunshi naturally knew about coconut oil. He was very surprised. Where did you get this? From the south. I got it when I was living in Jiangnan. Children have delicate skin and are prone to rashes and eczema. Little Shadow is also afraid of heat, so I brought it with me. Qin Min explained as she personally applied it for Yen. Her technique was like a massage, making Yen so comfortable that she calmed down. As Qin Min applied the oil, she inadvertently saw a phoenix birthmark on Yen's tailbone. What a beautiful birthmark. Qin Min couldn't help but sigh. She had never seen such a beautiful birthmark. All the daughters of the imperial family will have one. Han Yunshi directly said, Imperial family, and didn't say Western Qin imperial family. When Bai Yanqing announced the phoenix birthmark to the public, it was no longer a secret. However, Qin Min didn't care about the affairs of the world, so she didn't know about it. After applying the coconut oil, it felt cool and comfortable. Yana lay on her mother's body and didn't move. Did Zhao Mama teach you that sentence just now? Han Yunshi asked seriously. Yan looked up at her and pouted. Imperial Mother, can you pretend not to know? Han Yunshi was amused. Then what benefits do you want to give Imperial Mother? Yan thought for a moment and said seriously, I won't pester Daddy tonight and let Daddy have another younger brother with you. When she said this, Qin Min's face turned red. Han Yunshi's face turned even redder. She said angrily, Did Zhao Mama tell you this too? Yan subconsciously wanted to nod, but she immediately stopped and shook her head decisively. No. Then who told you? Han Yunshi asked again. Yan felt especially wronged under her mother's gaze. How could she understand the ambiguity of this topic? She completely didn't know why her mother suddenly became so fierce. She thought for a moment and said pitifully, Imperial Mother, can you pretend not to know? I can give you other benefits. What benefits? Han Yunshi continued to ask. I won't pester Father during the day. Granny Zhao said that during the day, Father can also give birth to a younger brother with Mother. As soon as he said that, not only did Han Yunshi blush, but her neck also turned red. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. Qin Min lowered her head. She was embarrassed and tried her best not to laugh. Seeing that her mother did not speak, Yana was so anxious that she was about to cry. She was afraid that her mother would do something to Zhao Mama. She asked anxiously, Imperial Mother, can you pretend that you don't know anything? I really won't pester Imperial Father anymore. I'll let you have a lot of younger brothers and sisters, all right? Not I won't. Han Yunshi immediately covered Yenner's mouth and stopped her from continuing. If this girl continued, who knew how many secrets she would reveal? Yen, Imperial Mother will pretend that she doesn't know anything. You have never told me about what happened today and Imperial Mother has never heard of it. Got it? Han Yunshi said seriously. Yenner nodded, but her eyes turned towards Qin Min at the side. Han Yunshi slowly turned her head. When Qin Min looked up, she saw the mother and daughter pair staring at her. Qin Min was extremely embarrassed. After saying for a long time she finally said, I don't know anything. Your Highness the Empress, Your Highness the Princess, please don't worry. When Han Yunshi carried Yenner and returned to the pavilion with Qin Min, the two adults were still embarrassed and silent. However, Yenner had already recovered her cheerful mood. Is everything all right? Long Fei Yi asked. Yenner was about to throw herself into Imperial Father's arms, but she suddenly stopped. She thought to herself, does the promise I made to Imperial Mother still count? Imperial Mother said that she would pretend that she didn't hear anything, so she should fulfill her promise. She can't pester Imperial Father anymore. Thus she shrank back into Imperial Mother's arms. Long Fei Yi was puzzled. He stood up and took the initiative to hug Yen. However, Yenner quickly dodged and wrapped her arms around Imperial Mother's neck tightly, not letting go. Long Fei Yi was puzzled. Ever since Yenner was born, she had never rejected his embrace. What was wrong with her? Yenner, be good. Come here. Long Fei Yi hugged Yenner and wanted to pull her out of Han Yunshi's arms. Yenner immediately cried, No. I don't want Imperial Father to hug me. I want Imperial Mother. Ooh. Imperial Mother, hurry and hug me. Long Fei Yi was stunned and stared at Han Yunshi in astonishment. Han Yunshi was originally afraid that Yenner would expose what had just happened, but when she saw Yenner's reaction she was happy. She hugged Yenner tightly and pretended to coax her. Yenner, be good. Imperial Mother will hug you, Imperial Mother will hug you. Yenner nodded vigorously. You have to hug me tightly. Yenner was too afraid that if Imperial Father carried her away, Imperial Mother would find trouble with Zhao Mama. Hug me tightly. Han Yunshi looked at Long Fei Yi's puzzled and disappointed expression and really wanted to laugh out loud. The feeling of being abandoned by your little lover must be very bad. Fortunately, had already grown up and was not as foolish and gullible as Yen. Long Fei Yi could not snatch her little lover away no matter what. What's wrong with her? Long Fei Yi asked. She's acting spoiled with her mother. It's inevitable. Sit down. Han Yunshi replied seriously. Long Fei Yi felt that something was wrong. However, Gu Beiyue and Qin Min were both present, so he did not pursue the matter and sat back down. Han Yunshi was a mother after all. Could she really be jealous of her daughter? She hugged her daughter tightly and unknowingly softened her voice. Yen'er, be good. Sleep with Imperial Mother tonight, okay? After having Yen'er, Long Fei Yi widened and lengthened the bed in Yuning City's sleeping quarters. The two of them, husband and wife, and the two children still slept together as a family of 4. However, the bed in Leisurely Cloud Palace did not need to be widened. The bed in Leisurely Cloud Palace almost filled up the entire room. Ever since Ru was no longer afraid of Long Fei Yi, he had been sleeping next to Long Fei Yi. However, ever since Yen'er was born, Long Fei Yi's embrace was exclusive to Yen'er. Ru could only hide in his imperial mother's embrace. Yen'er was different from Ru. Ru was very quiet during the day, but had a bad sleeping posture at night. On the other hand, Yen'er was lively during the day but very quiet at night. She basically lay in Long Fei Yi's embrace and did not move much. As a result, Han Yunshi really had not hugged Yen'er to sleep for a long time. When Yen'er heard that Imperial Mother wanted to sleep with her at night, she was stunned. If Imperial Mother slept with her, how could she give birth to a little brother with Imperial Father? She thought for a moment and immediately let go of her Imperial Mother. She shouted, I want Xiao Mama. Boo. I want Xiao Mama to hug me. I want to sleep with Xiao Mama tonight. When she said this, Han Yunshi realized that she had said something wrong. Long Fei Yi was even more puzzled. What happened in the room just now? Yen'er, what's wrong? He asked seriously. I want Xiao Mama. Yen'er's face was stiff. I want Xiao Mama. Xiao Mama did not know that the little princess had betrayed her. If it was only the Empress, she would have already come over to hug the little princess. However, with the Emperor present, she did not dare to move. Long Fei Yi stood up. Seeing this, Yen'er was even more frightened. She was so frightened that her eyes turned red. I want Xiao Mama. Imperial Father, don't move. Seeing that his daughter was about to cry, Long Fei Yi really did not dare to move. He could only let her have her way for now and wait for her to calm down before asking slowly. He was very sure that something big must have happened in the room. Yen'er got her wish and nestled into Xiao Mama's arms. Thus, Han Yunshi let Xiao Mama sit beside her and even gave her a bowl and chopsticks. Xiao Mama was scared silly. She sat there blankly, not daring to move. At this moment, Han Yunshi actually heaved a sigh of relief. Facing Long Fei Yi's suspicious gaze, she smiled slightly and said, Little Shadow, if you don't come down to eat, I'll punish you. Each of you will have to eat 10 mooncakes. Hearing this, Ru immediately jumped down. He had heard from Imperial Mother and Xiao Mama that he liked sweets when he was young, but he did not believe it. This was because he especially disliked sweet things now, and mooncakes were one of them. When her son arrived, Han Yunshi's smile became even brighter. She waved her hand. Quick, come to Imperial Mother. It was rare that Yen'er did not dare to pester her Imperial Father. Of course, she had to show off her affection with her son. As Ru approached, Han Yunshi hugged him tightly in her arms and hugged him. Ru was embarrassed and helpless. He was already 5 years old and was an adult, okay. Imperial Mother could not leave him some face. It was fine if she wanted to hug and kiss him in private, but how could she hug him in public like this? Although unwilling, Ru did not resist and obediently allowed his Imperial Mother to hug him. He could not bear to see his Imperial Mother unhappy. Long Fei Yi glanced over. How could his gaze be so complicated? Shadow, why aren't you coming down? Gu Beiyue spoke. Qin Min could not help but burst into laughter. She whispered, Shadow loves sweets the most. With her Imperial Majesty's threat, he definitely won't come down. Gu Beiyue was slightly taken aback. Only then did he realize that he knew nothing about Little Shadow's preferences. He stood up and flew soundlessly to the roof in a flash. Coincidentally, he landed behind Little Shadow. Little Shadow was sitting cross-legged, looking up at the moon. He coughed lightly. Ru immediately turned around. Daddy. Come down with Daddy to eat mooncakes, Gu Beiyue said gently. Little Shadow immediately stood up. Daddy, the moon is so beautiful. Gu Beiyue also looked up. It was the 15th of the month, his birthday. He did not even have the chance to look at the moon properly. Little Shadow walked over and stretched out his arms. Daddy carry. Gu Beiyue carried Little Shadow up. Little Shadow said, "Daddy, when Shadow grows up I'll protect you too, okay?" Gu Beiyue was startled. His heart suddenly softened and warmed. He said, "Okay. Daddy, wait for me." After Gu Beiyue carried Little Shadow down, he did not let go. Instead he kept Little Shadow in his arms. Watched for a long time. Seeing that Little Shadow had no intention of coming down, his heart finally relaxed. He was most afraid of being mocked by Little Shadow. Yen'er had been sleeping in the afternoon and did not see Little Shadow. She nestled in Granny Zhao's arms and curiously sized up Little Shadow. She whispered, "Granny Zhao, is he the Grand Tutor's son?" "He's Little Shadow. His name is Gu Nanshan," Granny Zhao answered truthfully. "Granny Zhao, he's really good-looking," Yen'er said. Chapter 1328. Little Shadow was indeed very good-looking. He had delicate features and was very handsome. Most importantly, this child loved to smile. Looking at his gentle and tender smile, it seemed that all troubles would disappear instantly. Granny Zhao acknowledged Princess Yan's judgment with a grunt of acknowledgement. Unexpectedly, Princess Yan added, "Granny Zhao, he's the most good-looking boy I've ever seen." Well, Granny Zhao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Due to the Emperor's excessive protection, the little princess had only seen His Highness the Crown Prince. Granny Zhao thought for a moment and said, "Princess, you must not let His Highness know about this." Yen'er looked up and answered, "Understood." Granny Zhao didn't know whether Princess Yan understood or not. She didn't dare to explain because the more she explained to Princess Yan, the more mistakes she would make. Princess Yan was nestled in Granny Zhao's arms. Long Fei Yi was the most depressed. From time to time he would look at Han Yunqi in his arms and then at his little lover in Granny Zhao's arms. He really felt like he had been abandoned by the whole world. Although depressed, he didn't forget to pick up food for Han Yunqi and Yan. Not to mention Gu Beiyue and Qin Min, he wouldn't even feed Han Yunqi in front of and Yan. Feeding could only be done in private. He wanted to feed Yen'er, but Yen'er avoided him. He fed but Ru'er was too used to it and ate immediately. However, before he could swallow the food, Ru'er regretted it. He was almost 5 years old, but he still had to be fed by his father. It was so embarrassing. He glanced at Gu Nanshan from the corner of his eye, afraid of being mocked. However, he saw Gu Nanshan eating the mooncake that his father fed him. Ru'er was finally relieved. Qin Min was so happy that she forgot to eat when she saw Gu Beiyue personally feeding Little Shadow. Gu Beiyue thought that she was nervous to eat on the same stage as the Emperor and Empress, so he whispered to her, "You're welcome." As he spoke, he personally scooped a bowl of soup for Qin Min and picked up a large bowl of food for her. Thus, a bowl of soup, a bowl of rice, and a bowl of food were placed in front of Qin Min. Qin Min had mixed feelings. This was the first time he had taken care of her. There was bitterness, but more than that, he wanted to laugh. When picking up food for a woman, one had to slowly add more food to her bowl, and then pick up more food after she was done eating. His bowl of soup, a bowl of vegetables, and a bowl of rice were clearly the standard for bringing children out for a banquet. This idiot. Han Yunqi could not help but laugh. "North Moon, do you think Qin Min is a child? You're just short of feeding her." Qin Min was about to start eating, but when she heard that, she stopped and felt a little embarrassed. Gu Beiyue, on the other hand, didn't have much of a reaction and just laughed it off. Who knew that the Little Shadow would push away the food that was about to be fed to his mouth and say, "I don't eat lettuce. I'll give it to Nyangqin. Nyangqin likes it." Gu Beiyue's hand froze. Qin Min was clearly a little surprised, but she quickly picked up the lettuce on Gu Beiyue's chopsticks and placed it in her bowl. Then she gave the potato to Little Shadow. "How about this? Do you want it?" Little Shadow seemed gentle on the surface, but he was very cunning inside. He knew his mother was unhappy with him doing this, so he took a bite out of the potato ball. Delicious. Just like that, Qin Min resolved the seemingly heartwarming awkwardness. Qin Min even paid great attention to what she said. She did not pick up Little Shadow's favorite dish, but the potato ball instead. She asked, "How about this? Do you want it?" And not, "This is your favorite. Go ahead and eat it." As parents, how could they not know what their children liked to eat and what they disliked to eat? However, Gu Beiyue just happened to be unaware of this. By doing this, she was helping Gu Beiyue cover up for him. It was just a pity that she had neglected her bowl of food. Her bowl of food had everything except for her favorite lettuce. Han Yunxi glanced at the food in Qin Min's bowl and discovered something strange, but she remained unfazed. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue continued to chat as they ate. Occasionally they would add more food for Han Yunxi and and ladle soup for Yan. Han Yunxi also chatted with Qin Min, from taking care of the child to cooking, from cooking to gardening. If Qin Min was not Gu Beiyue's wife, Han Yunxi really wanted to keep Qin Min in the palace. During this time, a palace maid walked to Han Yunxi's side and whispered, "Your Highness, the chicken roll you ordered has been cooked. Should I send it up now?" During these days when Long Fei Yi was partial to the little princess, Han Yunxi really had a lot of free time. Thus she used all her free time to research a dish, chicken roll. This dish was not called chicken roll at first but hot and sour hen soup. Moreover, the original version was very simple. It used chili, pickled vegetables and old hen to make a soup. After several months of improvement, it had become a completely different version, but it was still simple. Put the old hen in vinegar and let it simmer for half a day to turn it into a vinegar hen. Then use a piece of dough to roll the chicken and add 2 slices of cucumber to make it into a chicken roll. No matter how it tasted, it still looked very good. After several months of improvement, countless dishes were created. Whether Long Fei Yi had eaten it or not, only Han Yunxi and him knew. Even the cook who helped out in the kitchens did not know. Han Yunxi thought for a moment and whispered, "No need." The palace maid really sighed in relief for the emperor. However, Han Yunxi added, "Warm the chicken in a steamer and give it to the emperor as a midnight snack tonight." The palace maid could not help but glance at the emperor before leaving to carry out the order. After dinner, everyone strolled in the garden to admire the moon. Gu Beiyue still did not mention his birthday. After walking around, it was still early. Han Yunxi privately told to say that he was sleepy and wanted to sleep. Thus, everyone went their separate ways. Princess Yan was already fast asleep in Zhao Mama's arms. She was a sleepyhead, but was a night owl. After sending off Gu Beiyue and his family, Long Fei Yi asked, "What happened?" Han Yunxi sent her away before saying, "Gu Beiyue and Qin Min, there must be something wrong." According to Gu Beiyue, he and Qin Min were childhood sweethearts and had been in love for a long time. How could Gu Beiyue not know that Qin Min liked to eat lettuce? He gave Qin Min so many dishes, but there was not a single piece of lettuce. If Han Yunxi did not mention it, Long Fei Yi would not have noticed. He raised his eyebrows and smiled, "Let Gu Beiyue do as he pleases." Han Yunxi thought that since he was already married, there shouldn't be any big problems. She shrugged and did not think too much about it. Yana was sleeping with Zhao Mama and was nowhere to be found. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi walked into the depths of the garden, admiring the moon and chatting. It was as if they were revisiting an old place, as if they had returned to many years ago. And in another part of the palace, a red shadow flitted past. Zhao Mama ordered the palace maids to guard Princess Yan while she secretly chased after the red shadow, all the way to a secluded place. Who else could this red shadow be other than Shaoqi? "Your Highness Prince Yu, the Mid-Autumn Festival is a time for everyone to reunite. Since you're here, why don't you show your face?" Zhao Mama said helplessly. 3 years had passed, but Gu's face showed no signs of aging. He looked back with a smile that was as bewitching as ever under the moonlight. His eyes narrowed into slits as if he was eternally happy. He handed over a box of mooncakes and said with a chuckle, "For Poison Lass and Yen, don't tell them I came." He had spent 2 months trying all of Cloud Realm Continent's time-honored restaurants before picking out the best one. Poison Lass and her daughter both liked sweets. He knew that. 2 years ago he had been in the mysterious continent. This past year he had been hiding in Cloud Realm Continent, occasionally delivering nice things to Poison Lass and Yen, through Zhao Mama's hands under the pretext that they were tributes from below. There were plenty of people in Cloud Realm Continent who wanted to curry favor with the Empress and Princess Yen, so this excuse had never been seen through. Besides delivering gifts, he would also have Zhao Mama teach Yen about her 3 views on money, power and men and women. He always said to Zhao Mama, "If the Long Fei Yi hides Yenner in the palace like this, she'll definitely be tricked as soon as she leaves the palace." Granny Zhao also agreed with his opinion. Thus, Granny Zhao became Yenner's substitute teacher. Gu left a few more instructions before leaving in a hurry. He was afraid of being discovered by the Long Fei Yi, so he didn't dare to stay long. Gu had already forgotten whether he had joked about marrying the Long Fei Ye's daughter in the future. But he was very clear that the Long Fei Ye would strengthen his defenses as soon as he discovered his presence. He wouldn't let him see Yen. Gu Beiyue disappeared as soon as he left the palace, but Gu Beiyue saw a very familiar brocade box in front of his house. Gu Beiyue was stunned and Qin Min was curious. But Little Shadow rushed over and picked up the box. "Daddy, this box is so beautiful." Little Shadow was still very cautious about things of unknown origin, so she handed it to her daddy. "Did His Highness Prince Yu come down?" Qin Min couldn't help asking. "It should be." Gu Beiyue answered as he opened the box. Inside the brocade box was a round jade pendant. When the box was opened, the jade pendant was still dim, but after being illuminated by the moonlight for a while, it seemed to absorb the moonlight and gradually brightened. It was very beautiful. "Moonlight jade," Qin Min exclaimed. Gu Beiyue was very surprised as well. He took out the jade pendant and held it up to the moon for a while. The entire jade pendant was not only sparkling and translucent, but also seemed to emit light. It emitted a layer of light that was as clean and gentle as the moonlight. "It really is moonlight jade." Gu Beiyue was very certain. Moonlight jade was one of the most precious stones below white jade crystal. The reason why it was so precious was firstly because it was rare and secondly because this stone was very strange. It was usually very dim, but as long as it was illuminated by the moonlight, it would absorb the moonlight and become transparent and bright. It would even emit light. "Why did you suddenly give such a big gift?" Qin Min asked curiously. Gu Beiyue seemed to have thought of something, but Little Shadow suddenly shouted, "Daddy, Mommy, look, there are words at the bottom of the box." Gu Beiyue turned the box over, and only then did he discover 4 large golden words at the bottom of the box: "Birthday gift." Qin Min suddenly realized and asked Gu Beiyue in surprise, "Today is your birthday?" Gu Beiyue was stunned and after a while he smiled and admitted generously, "Yes." "How did Gu Qishao know my birthday? Could it be that when he was young in Medical City when his grandfather celebrated his birthday, Gu bumped into him?" Gu Beiyue thought about it and this was the only possibility. Chapter 1329. Today is Daddy's birthday? Little Shadow was also very shocked. He raised his head and looked at his mother. "Mother, you didn't know either?" Qin Min was startled. She looked at Gu Beiyue not knowing how to answer. Gu Beiyue also didn't know how to answer Little Shadow. The family of 3 stood at the door in silence. In the end it was Little Shadow who spoke first. "Daddy, why didn't you tell Mother? Why didn't you tell me?" Gu Beiyue held it in for a long time before he came up with a reason. Because it's mid-autumn. It'll be better after mid-autumn." "Why can't mid-autumn and my birthday be celebrated together?" Little Shadow tilted his head and asked. Because Daddy doesn't want to celebrate his birthday." Gu Beiyue squatted down and answered seriously. "Why not?" Little Shadow continued to ask. Because I'll be older by 1 year after my birthday." "Daddy doesn't want to be old," Gu Beiyue answered. This reason was enough to convince Little Shadow. No matter how smart Little Shadow was, he was still a child. He laughed mischievously. "So Daddy is also afraid of being old." Gu Beiyue pulled Little Shadow and smiled without saying a word. Little Shadow suddenly retreated and respectfully bowed to Gu Beiyue. He said loudly, "Nanshan wishes Daddy to never be old and live as long as the southern mountains." Live as long as the southern mountains. In an instant Qin Min's eyes turned red. She turned her head away, not letting Gu Beiyue and Little Shadow see her. She tried to calm herself down. Gu Beiyue was greatly startled. Looking at such an obedient and sensible Little Shadow, his heart slowly tightened. He knew that he had wronged this child, but he had never felt so uncomfortable when facing this child. He had never interacted with children before, so he always thought that it was easy to hide from a child's eyes. However, after personally teaching Little Shadow Qinggong in Ningzhou, he realized that children were the easiest to deceive. At first he only wanted a child to inherit the Shadow Clan's Qinggong and inherit the Shadow Clan's protection. Thus he made an agreement with Qin Min to marry her. Only now did he realize how absurd the path he had taken was. He would be able to control everything in his life, including his own heart. He would be able to control it well. He was very clear about what he should do and what he shouldn't do. He never crossed his bottom line. Towards Han Yunxi, even if it was admiration and admiration, he was dutiful and never had any improper thoughts or actions. After his identity was exposed, he even very rationally assisted Long Fei Yi. When it came to Qin Min, he was also rational, even if he could not bear to part with her. His words and actions had always been ruthless, always willing to part with his life. He was trying. However, he was very clear about the outcome of the 5-year agreement. He didn't say anything and let her work hard. He knew that only after trying his best would he have no regrets. Only then would he be relieved. But today, in front of Little Shadow, he realized that it was really hard to keep up the act. The older the child was, the more out of control everything would be. He smiled and didn't say anything. He just picked up Little Shadow. Little Shadow was the same as Yen. He was a baby who loved to sleep. Basically, he would go to sleep as soon as the sky turned dark. Tonight was an exception. On the way back he was still very sleepy. However, when he heard that it was his father's birthday today, he was wide awake again. As soon as he entered the door, he struggled out of his father's embrace and ran into the house to find a fiery red air pineapple. "Father, here you go." This air pineapple was given to him by his mother. He raised it from a seedling and took a year to bloom. Gu Beiwei accepted it with a smile. Little Shadow pestered him and told him a bunch of details about the air pineapple. He repeatedly reminded him not to spray too much water or it would rot. In the end, Little Shadow was too sleepy and asked, "Father, it's late. Are you going to sleep?" Gu Beiwei carried him to the couch and lay down with him. Little Shadow waved to Qin Min, who had followed them in. "Mother, it's time to sleep." When they were in Ningzhou, Little Shadow always went to bed early. It was always Qin Min who coaxed him to sleep. Qin Min always told him that his father still had to read medical books and would sleep at night. Little Shadow didn't wake up early either. Every time he woke up, Qin Min would have already made breakfast and would always tell him that his father had woken up early. As a result, Little Shadow got used to it after so many times. He didn't expect that on their first night back at the Grand Tutor's residence, they would face the problem of sleeping. However, Qin Min still easily resolved it. She said, "Shadow, mother will sleep with you. Your father needs to take a medicinal bath today." Shadow also knew about Gu Beiwei taking a medicinal bath. Although he was learning Qigong and medicine at the same time, with his current level he couldn't see the effects of those medicinal decoctions at all. In addition, his mother would often make some medicinal decoctions for him to take. He just treated it as recuperation and didn't think too much about it. Little Shadow was so sleepy that his eyes were about to close. He only made an N sound and agreed. However, Gu Beiwei got up. Before Qin Min could lie down, Little Shadow had already fallen asleep. Qin Min helped Little Shadow change his clothes and wash his face and feet, but Little Shadow didn't wake up. Gu Beiwei watched quietly from the side and didn't leave. After Qin Min was done, she saw that Gu Beiwei hadn't left. She asked in a low voice, "Aren't you going to take a medicinal bath?" Gu Beiwei said, "Maybe. I shouldn't have lied to him back then." Qin Min didn't know if everything would be different if she knew about Gu Beiwei's condition earlier. She said indifferently, "There's no turning back. You promised to lie to him for a lifetime." Gu Beiwei was speechless. He turned and left. After he took a medicinal bath, it was already late at night. When he opened the door, he saw Qin Min standing at the door with a bowl of birthday noodles. She must have just arrived. The noodles were still steaming. She said, "Grand Tutor Gu, the Mid-Autumn Festival is your birthday. Why don't you treat me as a family member for the time being and eat this bowl of noodles?" After his grandfather passed away, no family member made birthday noodles for him. Gu Beiwei didn't say anything, but he nodded. He finished the bowl of noodles cleanly. Qin Min sat at the side and watched. The more she watched, the more upset she felt. "Gu Beiwei, oh Gu Beiwei, I can be cruel and not love you, but I can't be cruel and not protect you and not take care of you." Gu Beiwei finished the bowl of noodles. Qin Min cleaned up the dishes and left. After Qin Min left, Little Thing came down from the roof. It hugged its arms and bowed to Gu Beiwei. It was also when it saw the bowl of birthday noodles that Little Thing knew that it was young master's birthday today. It wanted to wish young master a happy birthday, but it couldn't, so it could only bow. Gu Beiwei understood. He smiled and hugged Little Thing in his arms. He stroked it gently. "Little Thing, long time no see." Little Thing rubbed against his palm affectionately. Finally, it jumped onto his shoulder and pointed at the moon in the sky. Gu Beiyue looked up and faintly said, "Little Thing, in the future help me protect Qin Min and Nanshan, okay?" Little Thing didn't understand. It thought that young master was asking if the moon was beautiful or not. It nodded seriously. That night Little Shadow slept peacefully. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min looked at the moon for the whole night. The next day Little Shadow just finished practicing and wanted to return to his room. He bumped into Xin Yuanrui standing at his door. His figure flashed and arrived in front of Xin Yuanrui. He bowed respectfully. "Crown Prince, good morning." "It's not early," Xin Yuanrui said coldly. "Crown Prince, what advice do you have?" Little Shadow asked with a smile. "I was entrusted by someone to bring you to the palace." Xin Yuanrui's tone was cold. He was somewhat unhappy. He had a pile of homework to do today, but Yen-Er pestered him to bring her to the Tai tutor's residence. Even if he borrowed courage from Imperial Mother, he didn't dare to bring that little devil out of the palace. First, he couldn't subdue her. Second, if Imperial Father knew, he would definitely be grounded. Helpless, he could only personally go and bring Little Shadow to the palace. Yen-Er came to the Tai tutor's residence to play with Gu Nanshan. Little Shadow was nervous. There were only a few people in the palace, and there were only 3 people who could ask His Highness the Crown Prince to do things: Princess Yen, the Empress, and the Emperor. Of these 3, who wanted to see him? Before Little Shadow could ask, Xin Yuanrui opened his mouth first. "Let's go, my little sister wants to see you." Little Shadow widened his eyes and asked, "Why does Princess Yen want to see me?" Xin Yuanrui rolled his eyes. "How would I know? Are you coming or not?" Little Shadow said, "I want to tell my parents." Xin Yuanrui lost his patience and told Su Donglin to tell Gu Beiyue and Qin Min. He pulled Little Shadow over and left. Little Shadow rarely interacted with girls, and after seeing Princess Yen's actions last night, he couldn't help but be afraid of Princess Yen. He was very nervous the whole way, but who knew that when he saw Princess Yen handed him a piece of mooncake. "Brothering here." Granny Zhao said this was a tribute. "It's very delicious." Little Shadow was very surprised and didn't move. Princess Yen chuckled. "I know you like to eat sweets, so I specially left it for you. Eat it." Little Shadow was puzzled. He wanted to ask Princess Yen how she knew he liked sweets, but before he could open his mouth, Princess Yen said, "I counted. Last night you ate a total of 4 mooncakes. You ate 1 more than me. You really know how to eat." Little Shadow's face immediately turned red. He didn't know how to answer. "Take it. Hurry and eat it. This is the last one. Otherwise I'll regret it," Princess Yen urged. Little Shadow took the mooncake and ate it in big bites. Princess Yen was happy. "Brothering, if you play with me in the future, I'll give you delicious food." Little Shadow ate while nodding his head. Not for anything else, but because this mooncake was really delicious. It was the best dessert he had ever eaten. Xian Yuanrui was waiting at the side. He wanted to wait for Little Shadow to finish eating the mooncake and take him away to accompany him to do his homework. However, when he saw Little Shadow nod his head, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. He snorted disdainfully and turned to leave. In his opinion, little friends who were too easily bought over by delicious food were not good companions. Just like this, Little Shadow became familiar with Crown Prince Rui and Princess Yen, and gradually became a frequent guest in the palace. He followed the Crown Prince and Princess Yen to study, accompanied the Crown Prince to practice martial arts, and was often pestered by Princess Yen to play with him. His father was a busy man, so he became a little busy man. And Qin Min had been closed in the house and didn't go out. She concentrated on studying acupuncture. When she was tired, she went to take care of the wasteland in the house to change her mood. On this day, after Little Shadow fell asleep, Qin Min looked for Gu Beiyue to discuss the efficacy of the medicinal bath. Although Gu Beiyue had been soaking in the medicinal bath every day for several months, Qin Min didn't find that his condition had improved a little. As for whether it had worsened or not, she couldn't tell from his pulse. However, after being treated for so long, there was no improvement. This in itself was a sign of deterioration. Chapter 1330. As Qin Min supervised Gu Beiyue's medicinal bath, she came up with a set of acupuncture techniques. What she wanted to discuss with Gu Beiyue was the combination of medicinal treatment and acupuncture to see if it would be more effective. Ever since the 5-year agreement, Gu Beiyue's attitude towards treatment had been very positive. He cooperated with Qin Min's supervision, and at the same time, he also studied the illness with Qin Min and came up with a better treatment. After all, Gu Beiyue's medical skills were much better than Qin Min's. When Qin Min proposed acupuncture, Gu Beiyue gladly accepted. He cooperated with Qin Min's acupuncture and helped with all the adjustments. Thus, they began the combination of medicinal bath and acupuncture treatment. Every day they would have a medicinal bath and acupuncture treatment. Originally, Gu Beiyue's illness would act up twice a month. After they started the acupuncture treatment, Gu Beiyue's illness only acted up once a month. Qin Min was overjoyed, but Gu Beiyue only smiled faintly. Very soon Qin Min was dealt a blow. This was because Gu Beiyue's illness acted up 3 times in the following month. Qin Min's eyes were red. Gu Beiyue was like a bystander and comforted her. It's not a big deal. It's common for illness to act up. Let's wait and see. Thus, acupuncture and medicinal bath treatment were used. Qin Min did not care about the wasteland anymore. She immersed herself in the acupuncture treatment and practiced it every day and night. Other than cooperating with Qin Min's treatment and teaching little shadow martial arts, Gu Beiyue's work went on as usual. He taught the crown prince to study, read history, and commented on politics. He busied himself with the medical department's affairs and often had secret discussions with the group of advisors from the Long Fei Yi. As the days passed, his illness also acted up. Sometimes his illness would act up 3 or even 4 times a month. However, other times it would not act up for an entire month. Qin Min's mood fluctuated along with his illness. Fortunately, Han Yunxi would invite Qin Min into the palace when she was free. She would also come to the Grand Tutor's residence to play with Qin Min. Only when Han Yunxi came to visit Qin Min could Qin Min take out a pile of golden needles and medical books to temporarily relax. Peony's heart ached when she saw this. She refused to budge an inch for fear that her mistress would tire herself out. How could Gu Beiyue not feel heartache? It was as if he could see his mother's sleepless nights because of his father's illness. However, Qin Min was much stronger than her mother. He did not know if Qin Min had shed tears behind his back, but at the very least she had never cried in front of him. Her eyes had only turned red once. Day after day it seemed to be repeating itself, but it was not quite the same. Life went on like this, and before they knew it, 2 years had passed. For the past 2 years, Qin Min would cook a bowl of longevity noodles for Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue would finish the noodles, smile at her and thank her. Even though Gu Beiyue's condition kept worsening, Qin Min was never discouraged. She had been trying to figure out a new acupuncture method, and she had never given up even for a moment. This morning, Qin Min came to help Gu Beiyue with acupuncture as usual. As usual, Gu Beiyue looked at her quietly and did not speak. After Qin Min finished the acupuncture, she waited at the side. She had to wait for 2 hours before she could remove the needles. This was the longest time they had spent alone in the past 2 years. However, other than discussing his condition, they did not speak most of the time. He would lie on the couch and she would sit at the tea table, flipping through medical books. Since the 5-year agreement, she had been deliberately keeping a distance from him. He could tell. Qin Min sat at the side reading medical books. As she read, she fell asleep on the table. Gu Beiyue turned around and saw her like this. His gaze softened. He sighed softly. Qin Min, you're really a silly girl. Many times he would make assumptions. If his father could chase his mother away when he left, would his mother not have left with his father? He would never forget the scene of his mother lying in a pool of blood. When he was young, he would dream of that scene 2 or 3 times a year. Later on, when he grew up, he never dreamed of it again. Gu Beiyue looked at her. When it was time to remove the needles, he did not wake Qin Min up. Instead, he asked the medical assistant to remove the needles for him. He put on a coat for Qin Min and went out. When Qin Min woke up, it was already late at night. When she looked up, she immediately looked at the bed, only to see that it was empty. Gu Beiyue! She shouted. Gu Beiyue, who was sitting at the side, smiled faintly. Dr. Qin, what did you do last night? She actually slept from morning till night. How tired must she be? Qin Min heaved a sigh of relief. Why didn't you wake me? The shadow accompanied the crown prince out of the city early in the morning. He won't be back tonight. I saw that you had nothing to do, so I didn't disturb you, Gu Beiyue said faintly. However, Qin Min was furious. She slammed the table and said angrily, I have a lot of things to do. I want to read medical books. I still have a few sets of acupuncture techniques that I haven't figured out yet. Gu Beiyue was startled and did not say anything else. This was probably the first time he had seen Qin Min so angry. He knew that her temper had always been good. It was because of him that she became like this. Qin Min realized that she had overreacted. She lowered her head and said faintly, "It's late. You should rest early." She left after saying that. However, when she reached her room, she suddenly remembered that Gu Beiyue had been soaking in the medicinal soup. She would ask him every day, "Did you soak in the medicinal soup?" She immediately went back. Before she could knock on the door, she heard violent coughing coming from inside the room. She panicked and immediately pushed the door open. She saw Gu Beiyue kneeling on the floor with one hand on the floor and the other on his chest. He was coughing so hard that he could barely breathe. Qin Min was frantic. She lived each day cautiously waiting. She was afraid that Gu Beiyue's illness would flare up again. One had to know that Gu Beiyue's illness had flared up 4 times last month, but last month, it had not flared up even once. This month she had lived every day carefully. Until yesterday, Gu Beiyue's illness had not flared up. There were 2 more days until the end of the month. Last night, when she went to bed, she was secretly happy that Gu Beiyue's illness was getting longer and that it was a good sign. However, tonight Qin Min walked over briskly and helped Gu Beiyue sit up. She poured a cup of water for him to drink. However, Gu Beiyue's cough was too severe. There was no way for him to drink water. Qin Min decisively gave up and hurriedly took out her gold needles to treat him. Since the first time Gu Beiyue's illness flared up, she knew how to save him. The first was to let him drink water to relieve his cough. The second was to seize the time to treat him with acupuncture to suppress his cough. If it was in the past, Gu Beiyue's cough would slow down as Qin Min treated him with acupuncture. However, the situation this time was completely different. As Qin Min treated him with acupuncture, Gu Beiyue coughed even more severely. He even coughed up blood. After Qin Min treated him with acupuncture, Gu Beiyue did not stop. Instead, he coughed up 3 mouthfuls of blood. Qin Min was scared out of her wits. However, she was still calm. She changed to another set of acupuncture techniques, but it was still ineffective. She did not give up. She changed to another set, but it was still ineffective. Gu Beiyue's mouth and clothes were full of blood. He kept coughing as he vomited blood. Qin Min's legs were cold. She could not treat him with acupuncture. "Gu Beiyue, tell me, what should I do? Tell me. I'm begging you, please. Tell me what to do. You must have a way. Gu Beiyue, stop coughing. Believe you. I'll divorce you. I won't let you see me for the rest of my life. As long as you don't cough, as long as you're fine." Qin Min looked at the needles that had fallen to the ground. She really broke down. However, Gu Beiyue coughed until he was almost out of breath. He could not even open his mouth to answer her. His internal organs were all in pain. Fresh blood kept coming out of his mouth. He could only hold on. There was no other way. When Gu Beiyue calmed down, Qin Min looked as if her soul had been sucked out. She sat at the side in a daze and looked at him. Gu Beiyue lay on the ground weakly. His white clothes were stained with the blood that he had coughed up. He was so weak that he looked like he would die at any moment and disappear. The world was quiet and still. Only time passed. After an unknown amount of time, Gu Beiyue finally caught his breath. His tone was frivolous and cruel. He said, "Qin Min, it looks like your acupuncture technique is ineffective." Qin Min's heart was bitten by something. It was extremely painful. She had worked so hard and persevered for so long. How could it be ineffective? How could it be? She crawled to her feet and used all her strength to help Gu Beiyue to his feet and back onto the bed. She called the medical assistant over and helped him change his clothes. She squatted on the ground and used a handkerchief to wipe the blood. It was only when the medical assistant left that she got up and walked to the side of the bed. She said, "Gu Beiyue, it hasn't been 5 years yet. Can't you come to a conclusion so quickly? I still have 3 years, right?" Gu Beiyue did not answer, but Qin Min insisted that he give her a definite answer. "There are still 3 years, right?" she asked him. "Qin Min, you should know that it's impossible to accurately estimate the time when the condition changes." He looked into her eyes when he said this. He was calm and cruel. In other words, she still had 3 years to cure him. However, he might not have 3 years. She pretended not to hear him and did not pursue this issue with him. She pulled his hand out and took his pulse. However, Qin Min panicked when she took his pulse. How could this be? When she checked his pulse this morning, his pulse was still fine and there wasn't much difference from before. But this time it was only one day. His pulse was so chaotic that she couldn't figure out what was wrong. She couldn't believe it and tried again, but it was just as chaotic. She tried a few more times, but it was the same. Gu Beiwei. She choked with sobs. Gu Beiwei withdrew his hand and sighed softly. After a long time he said, Qin Min, I've already explained everything to the medical department. I've asked for leave from His Majesty and want to travel around Cloud Realm continent to see the situation of the various medical centers. I'll leave in a few days. Accompany me. Don't worry, Shadow will stay with esteemed Empress. Gu Beiwei paused for a while before continuing. In the last 2 to 3 years of my father's life, he spent most of his time soaking in medicinal decoctions. In the last year he spent almost the entire day soaking in them. That prescription was something my grandfather came up with. It can only stop coughing, not save his life. One day even that decoction won't stop coughing. Don't say it. Qin Min covered her ears, not letting Gu Beiwei continue. Gu Beiwei didn't say anything else. Actually, it didn't make any difference whether he said it or not. Qin Min already understood. She didn't just understand. He was suddenly enlightened. Doctors didn't treat themselves, but doctors knew themselves. Chapter 1331. Gu Beiwei had always been clear about his condition and knew that her acupuncture skills wouldn't be able to save him. Qin Min suddenly felt that she'd been a fool. Wasn't she just a little better at acupuncture? How could she possibly defeat Gu Beiwei? He was Cloud Realm Continent's only sovereign doctor and its #1 medical practitioner. How was she supposed to do something that even he couldn't do? As it turned out, the 5-year agreement and his cooperation over the past 2 years were all part of his plan. He wanted her to experience it herself and see it with her own eyes. He wanted her to be convinced and give up. Qin Min stared at Gu Beiwei's pale, gentle face and suddenly couldn't remember how they'd made it through the past 2 years. She clenched her blood-stained handkerchief tightly in her hand as her lips pursed. No one would ever know how much she wanted to throw herself into his arms and cry her heart out. But she couldn't. He didn't. Was unbridled while love was restraint. Often disturbed a person, but love didn't. Rest well, she said mildly. I'll have the medical assistant stand guard outside. Call me immediately if anything happens. Then she left without any lingering thoughts or entanglement. Qin Min returned to her rooms just in time to see Xiaoyao coming out. Young miss, where did you go so late at night? Xiaoyao asked with concern. When Qin Min looked up, Xiaoyao froze, because she saw her young miss's eyes redden again. She couldn't even remember how long it had been since she last saw her. Since her young miss said she wasn't crying, Xiaoyao didn't dare to say she was. Carefully she asked, Young miss, you did the son-in-law bully you again? Qin Min looked at her for a long time before she said word by word, Xiao, I definitely won't give up. But Qin Min didn't give up. A few days later she personally brought little Shadow to the palace and entrusted her to Han Yunxi's care. Then she left the capital with Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei had already spent 3 years traveling to every county in Cloud Realm continent to check on the progress of medical research. Now Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi naturally didn't have any doubts. Long Fei Yi originally planned to send people to patrol. Since Gu Beiwei mentioned it, Long Fei Yi allowed it. The little Shadow was reluctant to part with her father and mother, so she really wanted to go with them. However, his father and mother were on official business, so he didn't dare to say anything. A few days ago his father had given him a Qin Gong secret manual and promised him that as long as he learned it he could go find them. Therefore, after Daddy and Mommy left, little Shadow practiced even more diligently. Before long summer arrived. Had gone to the poison sex forbidden grounds to learn martial arts from grandfather Han Chen. Princess Yen was bored alone in the palace and couldn't help but harass little Shadow. Little Shadow said to her seriously, Your Royal Highness, I have to master Qin Gong before I can catch up to my father and mother. You go play by yourself, all right? Yen rolled her eyes a few times and immediately ran to grab the sleeping Lil Thing. She said seriously, Let Lil Thing practice with you. Lil Thing runs really fast. Lil Thing wanted to go with the gentleman, but he wouldn't let it. It secretly followed him for an entire day before he glared at it. That was the first time he'd ever been so fierce to it. It felt like the world was crumbling around it. Even now it was still listless and did nothing but sleep. Lil Thing was too lazy to pay attention to Princess Yen and allowed her to grab it. Unexpectedly, the princess suddenly tossed it into the air and forced it to wake up. It had no idea why Princess Yen had called it here, but it ran as fast as it could as soon as it landed. Seeing this, Little Shadow was amused and immediately chased after her. After all, no one had been able to practice martial arts with him ever since his father left. The shadow guards in the palace were fast, but they were not as fast as him. Immerse saw how Little Shadow was happy, so she was happy too. She called over Su Donglin and sat on Su Donglin's neck. She called out, "Chase them. Chase them. All shadow guards will be heavily rewarded if you catch them." After that, the quiet imperial palace became lively. Little Shadow could often be seen chasing after Lil Thing. A group of people accompanied Princess Yen as they chased after Little Shadow. Gu Beiyue obviously did not patrol the various medical centers. He sent a few people to secretly patrol the medical centers for him and write letters to the medical department from time to time. He brought a servant with him while Qin Min brought Xiaoyao. The two of them went to Boundless Mountain. Boundless Mountain was to the north of Medical City. It was not too far away from Medical City. It was a very steep mountain. Back then, Northman's father had spent the last few years of his life on this mountain. When Qin Min and Gu Beiyue arrived at the waist of the mountain, they discovered quite a lot of medicinal herbs there. They were all on Gu Beiyue's medicinal bath recipe. They passed through a forest and saw a waterfall. There was a small courtyard beside the waterfall. It seemed very much like a place of seclusion. For a moment, Qin Min even mistakenly believed they were going to live here in seclusion, living a carefree life. Approaching the courtyard, Qin Min discovered various wild herbs growing inside and outside the courtyard. These herbs were all on the medicinal bath recipe. She purposefully searched through the recipes one by one, and she really did find them all. Without a doubt, someone had purposefully planted these wild herbs and allowed them to grow wild. Qin Min smiled and asked, "So Grand Tutor Gu, you've already prepared everything?" Gu Beiyue only smiled and did not answer. After his father and mother passed away, he and his grandfather had left this courtyard. However, his grandfather would bring him back once or twice every year to clean up, repair, and take a look at how these herbs were growing. Grandfather didn't spend the last few years of his life here. Grandfather ended his life in the Gu residence. He had never even seen his grandfather's illness act up before. Although his grandfather did not say it, he knew that this courtyard was left for him, and these herbs were also left for him. Gu Beiyue walked into the house and brought out a chair for Qin Min to sit on. He said, "You haven't been here for a year. Clean up first before you go in." Qin Min rolled her eyes at him. She rolled up her sleeves and strode into the house. Gu Beiyue was slightly stunned. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have been able to imagine Qin Min rolling her eyes. Throughout their journey from the capital to here, Qin Min had stopped calling him Grand Tutor Gu. She called him by his name and did not exchange pleasantries with him. It was as if she had become a different person. However, he did not find it unfamiliar. He still maintained this courtesy. Peony followed in and so did the servants. Qin Min did not chase them away and ordered them to do this and that. However, when Gu Beiyue wanted to go in, Qin Min glared at him. Gu Beiyue had no choice but to sit down and rest. After Qin Min explained everything in the house, she cleaned up the two large bathtubs outside the house. These two bathtubs were made of stone. They had not been used for many years and had accumulated rainwater. Moss and some vines grew on them. After Qin Min cleaned one, she turned back to look at Gu Beiyue and asked, "Just one? Can we keep the other one?" "Why?" Gu Beiyue asked. "I want to plant some flowers," Qin Min said. Gu Beiyue readily agreed. He could tell that Qin Min's mood had improved a lot after leaving the capital. Perhaps it had something to do with his illness not acting up after leaving the capital. From tomorrow onwards he would soak in the medicinal soup all day and would not cough for a long time. Her mood should be better. Gu Beiyue was such a mature person, but there were times when he was naive. When Qin Min finished with her work and came over to take his pulse, he knew that he had thought too much of Qin Min. The moment Qin Min took his pulse, she knew that his pulse was deteriorating day by day. After taking his pulse, the corners of Qin Min's mouth drooped. She said, "You rest. I'll go boil the medicinal soup. I haven't done it today." Just like that, they settled down on the mountainside. Gu Beiyue spent most of his time soaking in the medicinal soup. Other than cooking 3 meals herself, Qin Min spent most of her time immersed in the medical books that they had brought. She insisted on taking Gu Beiyue's pulse every day, 3 times a day in the morning and at noon. As for the large bathtub that had not been cleaned, she had not planted the flowers that she liked. There was very little interaction between them, but they spent more and more time alone. Gu Beiyue's servants were in charge of gathering and boiling the herbs, while Xiaoyao was in charge of some daily chores. Qin Min personally looked after Gu Beiyue. She would either read the medical books in the house with only a window between her and Gu Beiyue, or sit beside Gu Beiyue and read. When Gu Beiyue was bored, he would ask Qin Min for medical books to read. When Qin Min saw him soaking in the medicinal soup and reading leisurely, she wanted to laugh and feel sad at the same time. Although his illness had not acted up for a long time, he was walking towards the end of his life. How could he be so calm and collected? So cruel. The facade of calmness did not soothe Qin Min's heart. She flipped through all the medical books and finally decided to start with acupuncture. After all, this was what she was best at and the only thing that she could work hard on. She stabbed the small golden knife that Gu Beiyue had given her on the wall as a warning to herself. At the same time, she laughed and joked with Gu Beiyue. Since it's hopeless, then I'll just treat it as a last resort and use you as practice. Gu Beiyue was stunned for a long time and realized that he could not see through Qin Min. He could not even imagine what Qin Min's reaction would be if he left her one day. Until one day when he passed by Qin Min's room, the door happened to be open. He caught a glimpse of the small golden knife and the medical books on her table. He sighed softly and did not know what to say. He could only pretend that he did not see it. Day by day time passed by. Only time would know how long Gu Beiyue would live. In the past few years, the Great Qin Empire's national strength had gradually increased. Its treasury was filled and its industries were very developed. Long Fei Yi gradually had the desire to conquer the mysterious continent again. Of course, his desire to conquer the mysterious continent was just an ambition. He did not want to conquer it immediately. He knew very well that it was a continent where martial strength was king. If he wanted to conquer that continent, an army was useless. Wealth was also useless. Only powerful martial strength was needed. In the past few years, under Han Chen's guidance, he and Han Yunxi had not stopped cultivating. After they had completely mastered the Lust Bite power and Phoenix power, these 2 powers still had room to improve and become stronger. However, it was also more difficult to cultivate. He and Han Yunxi were waiting. They were waiting for the promise of 10 years and the competition for the position of Wolf Sect Master. They believed that that would be their first step into the mysterious continent. Apart from national affairs and martial cultivation, Long Fei Yi had not given up on one thing, and that was to find Ning Qing. However, Ning Qing had already gone to the mysterious continent with Lu Jing a few years ago. Chapter 1332. It was the middle of autumn now, so even the northern regions of Cloud Realm continent weren't cold yet. But to the north of Cloud Realm continent, the mysterious continent was already snowing by the ice sea. Although the mysterious continent had 4 seasons, its winters were especially long. In some ways, winter had long begun here. Ning Qing was a winter lover. Besides his addiction to alcohol, he had another secret hobby. He liked to sleep in the sun on winter afternoons. If he couldn't be found anywhere in winter, he'd definitely be found in the sunniest places. Unfortunately, no one knew where he was now. Every winter he would be in a good mood. He followed Lu Jing to the mysterious continent and stayed there for 1 winter before deciding never to go back. Lu Jing was the first to catch wind of Jin Zi's invasion of Winter Crow country and the first to flee. Many of the slave masters who followed him had no choice but to sneak into Northern Li to avoid being caught red-handed. Only Lu Jing escaped to the mysterious continent without hesitation. Ning Qing didn't contact Jin Zi to capture Lu Jing. Instead, he helped the man escape Jin Zi's eyes and reach the shores of the ice sea. This was Jin Zi's first real battle, but his biggest regret was that he couldn't catch Lu Jing. What would he think if he knew it was Ning Cheng's doing? Naturally, Ning Qing hadn't helped Lu Jing for nothing. He wanted to use him to cross the ice sea and investigate Jin Zi's origins while getting a feel for Lu Jing's background. He had long confirmed that Jin Zi was sold from the mysterious continent to the Winter Crow Nation. After 10 rounds of reselling, his true identity was concealed. Only then did he become a slave of the Winter Crow Nation and was sold to the three-way black market. But he still couldn't figure out how Gene Z had been sold from the mysterious continent to Winter Crow country, or where he came from. What he didn't expect was to find out the origins of the beast-taming arts and the existence of the Black Forest as soon as he set foot on the mysterious continent. Although he hadn't gone there himself, he was certain that the ancestors of the Black Clan had to have come from there. Gene Z's ability to control tigers had to have come from the Black Forest's former rulers, the Ling clan. No wonder Gene Z had been sold to Cloud Realm Continent instead of Mysterious Sky Continent. Cloud Realm Continent and the Mysterious Continent had always been two separate worlds, making it difficult for news to travel between them. Everyone in the Mysterious Continent knew about this, but it was a huge secret in Cloud Realm Continent. Ning Qing did not know that Goldie had already met the people in the Black Forest. He was anxious to tell Goldie everything. Unfortunately, he just arrived at the mysterious Void Continent and was unfamiliar with the place, so he was truly unable to find a way to send the news to the other side of the Ice Sea. There was a rumor on the mysterious continent that the divine bird, the phoenix, had once appeared on the Ice Sea. Only the phoenix could fly across the Ice Sea. Of course, it was impossible to use eagles and pigeons to deliver letters, and if one was not capable enough, they would not be able to leave either. The Ice Sea was a very unique existence. Although it was located between Cloud Realm Continent and the Mysterious Continent, its temperature was much lower than the north and south shores. Within the Ice Sea region there had never been any rain or snow. It was always sunny. The vast expanse of ice that stretched as far as the eye could see was like a large, glossy mirror that could clearly reflect all the colors in the sky. This ice surface was not only more slippery than the average ice surface, but the most terrifying thing was that its temperature was much lower than half of the ice surface. Ordinary horses and carriages were useless here, but even ordinary sled dogs wouldn't be able to travel on it. To cross the Ice Sea, one had to use a type of dog called the golden-eyed snow mastiff to pull the sled. Otherwise, one would be stuck between a rock and a hard place and die on the ice. The Ice Sea had existed for thousands of years, so it was inevitable that some ignorant people would wander in and freeze to death on the ice. Their corpses were preserved in the cold for eternity. The golden-eyed snow mastiff was a strange beast that lived on the shores of the Ice Sea. It had an eccentric temperament and was amenable to force, but not persuasion. If you treated it well, it would look down on you and bite you. But if you were tough enough to subdue it, it would obediently pull the sled for you and take you across the Ice Sea in the shortest time possible. The only way to subdue a golden-eyed snow mastiff was through a duel. Of course, some powerful martial artists didn't even need to fight. They just needed to stand on the shore and the golden-eyed snow mastiff would obediently submit and lick their feet. This was the case for people like Han Chen. As for martial artists like Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, no one knew what the situation was like. They had always wanted to come to the Ice Sea to take a look, but they never had the time. As for Gu, he had to fight with a few golden-eyed snow mastiffs every time he came to the shore. Gu had been traveling between Cloud Realm and Mysterious Realm for many years. So many golden-eyed snow mastiffs were familiar with him. He often stood on the shore and looked back only to see dogs behind him. As for Ning Qing, he didn't have the chance to fight with the golden-eyed snow mastiffs when he came to the Ice Sea with Lu Zheng. Although Lu Zheng didn't know how to fight, the golden-eyed snow mastiffs were afraid of him and submitted to him. Lu Zheng brought a group of more than 10 people to the northern shore of the Ice Sea, the Mysterious Realm Continent, in half a month. Ning Qing was very puzzled at first, but when he learned about the Black Forest he guessed that Lu Zheng had most likely come from there. It was also very likely that Lu Zheng had personally taken Gene Z out of the Black Forest. Ning Qing thought that Lu Zheng would return to the Black Forest, but not only did Lu Zheng not return, but he also led the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce to do all kinds of business on the Mysterious Realm Continent. Ning Qing was even more valued by Lu Zheng because he had helped him escape from Winter Crow. After arriving at the Mysterious Realm Continent, he had also helped Lu Zheng earn a lot of money. Now, Ning Cheng's position in the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce was not only on par with Lu Zheng's adopted daughter, Lulu, but also had the potential to surpass her. Ning Qing didn't forget to secretly inquire about the Black Forest as he tried to please Lu Zheng. Unfortunately, not everyone could enter the Black Forest and not everyone knew about it. Even though he had been on the Mysterious Realm Continent for a few years, he still couldn't find out much inside information. The sun was warm in the afternoon. It was deep in the night and snow swirled in the air. Ning Qing was boiling wine by himself in his room. No one knew how he did it, but the fragrance of the wine filled the room. Someone with a poor tolerance for alcohol might really get drunk if they stayed too long in the room. He was still used to the black robes he always wore when he was at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. There were no superfluous decorations, only simple and neat. In private he always took off his eye patch. Unless one looked closely, one wouldn't be able to tell that his eyeballs were damaged, much less that he was blind in one eye. He sat by the stove and scooped up a spoonful of warm wine. He sniffed at it lightly before his lips curved into an evil smile. This wine was like prey in his hands, tasting as he pleased. Nobody would believe that he wasn't lonely on a snowy winter night in a foreign country, but some would believe that he was enjoying himself. Ning Cheng's greatest regret when it came to wine was that he could never drink to his heart's content. Drinking wine required a good mood, but getting drunk was even more important. This was especially true for someone with a high tolerance for alcohol. Just as the fragrance of the wine was beginning to build up, Ning Qing suddenly paused in the middle of scooping it up. He stood up and leaned against the window, peeking through a crack, only to see a figure vanish from the window above. Someone's broken in? The courtyard he was staying in was a large courtyard house. He lived in the left wing, Lei in the right, and Lu Jing in the upper room. Lu Jing didn't know martial arts, but he'd raised a group of experts to protect him on the mysterious continent. This courtyard was heavily guarded, so anyone who could sneak in the middle of the night had to be highly skilled in martial arts. There was no way the guards outside wouldn't have noticed the intruder, but he himself. Ning Qing seemed to think of something because he immediately went out the door to chase after the intruder and sneak into Lu Zheng's room. He saw the black-robed man approaching the sleeping Lu Zheng with a blade in hand. Just as he was about to speak, a dagger suddenly reached out from behind him. The tip of the dagger was pressed against his back. So the real expert was behind him. Before the person behind him could speak, Ning Qing spoke first. Lei, if you take another step forward, I guarantee you won't be able to walk out of this room. The black-robed man in front immediately turned around, only to discover that Ning Qing had sneaked in. She pulled off her mask and it really was Lei. Although she was surprised, she remained calm. Her lips curled into a sinister smile and she whispered to the person behind Ning Qing, "Jean, do you think your blade is faster or his mouth is faster?" The person behind her didn't answer, so Lei continued, "But even if his mouth is faster, he'll definitely die." From Lei's point of view, the only thing Ning Qing could do was to call for the guards. Unexpectedly, Ning Qing said, "Your godfather is dead and I'm dead. You'll never know where the treasure is hidden. There's only 10 taels of silver in the boundless mountains." Not long ago, Lu Zheng had hidden all his wealth from the slave trade in a secret place and told Ning Qing and Lei about it. He promised that if the two of them got married and inherited the Lubei Chamber of Commerce, he would give them the wealth. From then on, Lei wanted to kill Lu Zheng. She was originally a slave that Lu Zheng had bought and kept by his side, taking her as his goddaughter. She often said that she would never marry and that she loved her godfather the most, but in reality what she loved most was Lu Zheng's wealth. When Ning Qing said this, Lei couldn't remain calm. "Don't try to trick me. If I don't know where the treasure is hidden, it's even more impossible for you to know." Ning Qing laughed contemptuously. He was obviously under someone's control, but he still acted high and mighty, not showing the slightest bit of embarrassment. He whispered, "There's a key in the third drawer of the cabinet on the left." Lei was shocked. She had already checked everything in Lu Zheng's room. She didn't know that there was a secret room in the third drawer. "There's also a key under your godfather's pillow," Ning Qing said again. Lei was clearly not calm. Ning Qing continued, "I also have one on me." Lei followed Ning Qing's words. Her gaze kept shifting from the cabinet to the bed and then back to Ning Qing. "The one in the cabinet was prepared for you. You need to use all 3 keys to open the lock of the treasure," Ning Qing said again. Lei was a greedy person. After hesitating for a moment, she walked towards the cabinet and decisively opened it. Who knew that as soon as the cabinet opened, an arrow would shoot out? Lei was stunned. The person behind Ning Qing was also surprised. He immediately chased out and shouted, "Jean, be careful." Almost at the same time, Lei's arm was pierced by the arrow. The girl called Jean rushed to her side and grabbed her hand. Lu Jing sat up from the bed in shock. The guards outside heard the commotion and rushed over. Ning Qing didn't move from his spot. Ning Cheng's lips curled into a cold smile. Jean made a prompt decision and pulled Lei to escape through the window. Soon they were engaged in a fight with the guards outside. Lu Jing looked at Ning Qing in shock. What's going on? Ning Qing said, Godfather, Lei betrayed us. She wants to assassinate you. Lu Jing was so shocked that he couldn't speak. When he got down from the bed and chased after them, Jean had already fought her way out of the encirclement and escaped with Lei. Ning Qing followed them out and stood behind Lu Jing. He said calmly, Godfather, this kind of traitor should be killed without mercy. Chapter 1333. Godfather? This title made Lu Jing laugh coldly. As he laughed, tears welled up in his eyes. After all, this child was not his own. He treated Lei like his own daughter. Not only did he want to hand over the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce to her, he even found a good son-in-law like Cheng for her. He did not expect Lei to want his life. Lu Jing laughed coldly for a long time before turning to look at Ning Qing. He asked, Cheng, when are you going to betray me? For the past 2 to 3 years he had been trying to matchmake Lei and Ning Qing. He always said to Cheng, you can call me Godfather like your wife. Don't call me Boss Lu. In the future when you and Lei have a child I will hand Liu Bei over to you. I will take care of the child for you. Cheng did not agree to the marriage, but had long changed his way of addressing him as Godfather like Lei. Cheng's attitude towards marriage had always been difficult for him to understand. After all, compared to Cheng he had always trusted Lei more. He wanted to hand over the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce to Lei, not Cheng. He only wanted to use the marriage to help Lei keep Ning Qing and restrain Cheng. After all, Cheng's business skills were much better than Lei's. Everything that had happened tonight, including the scene he had seen when he woke up in bed, had made him despair. Faced with Lu Zheng's question, Ning Qing was very calm. He said, Godfather, if I wanted to betray you, you would already be dead. Although this was the truth, Lu Zheng did not seem to believe it. Ning Qing added, Liu Bei has long been mine. These words made Lu Zheng believe him. All these years, Liu Bei's big business had been done by Ning Qing. Although Cheng could not control the wealth he had hidden, it was still easy for him to control the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. Ning Qing explained everything that had just happened, including how he had tricked Lei. Lu Jing remained silent. After a while, the guards who had chased after Lei returned. Boss Lu, the people with the young miss are very skilled. They ran away. Lu Jing suddenly turned around and punched the door. He said, Lei, don't blame your father for being heartless. I'm not righteous. Ning Qing said, Godfather, cut off her source of income immediately. She won't get far. All right. Lu Jing went into the house and took out a key. He said, the treasure is still hidden in a measurable mountain, but the lock has been changed. I'll give you this key first. If you bring Lei back, her key will belong to you. Ning Qing did not take the key. He said indifferently, there's no hurry. Keep the key safe. When I catch her, I'll give it to her. Very good. I hope Godfather didn't misjudge you. After Lu Jing finished speaking, he turned around and entered the room. But he fiercely slammed the door. Although Ning Qing saw the tears in Lu Zheng's eyes, after Lu Jing turned around and entered the house, the corners of his mouth still curled up into a mocking smile, without the slightest bit of sympathy. Lu Jing was a slave trader and even more so a trafficker. He was betrayed by Lei, so what? That night Ning Qing did 3 things. The first was to spread the news that Lei had betrayed the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce and offered a sky-high reward. The second was to lock up all of Lei's henchmen in the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. Even if it was someone with a high position in the Chamber of Commerce, he showed no mercy. This time he arrested more than 10 people. Ning Qing did not interrogate them. Ning Qing only used this as an excuse to arrest them. He needed to clear out Lei's henchmen in the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce and replace them with his own trusted aides. The third was to interrogate a woman, Shekyu. On the first New Year's Eve when Ning Qing entered the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce, Lu Zheng gave him a female slave, Shekyu. Although it was given in Lu Zheng's name, she was actually one of Lei's people. Ning Qing still kept Shekyu by his side. From time to time he would give Lei fake news. When Ning Qing walked into Shekyu's room, the sleeping Shekyu immediately woke up. Although she was startled, she quickly came back to her senses. Master Qing, why are you so late? She threw a coquettish glance at Ning Qing and got off the bed barefoot. Under the thin skirt, her graceful and exquisite body was faintly discernible, very tempting. Over the years, Ning Qing had received a lot of Sheikyu's charm. He had to admit that Lei was very good at picking women. He had always been very grateful to Lei for giving him such a stunner. He was able to use Sheikyu to win over Lu Zheng's personal servant, Steward Ma. Sheikyu was very good at drinking, but she was still far inferior to Ning Qing. So, every time after drinking it was not Ning Qing himself who did it but Steward Ma. Sheikyu still did not know about it. As for Lei, he was even more unaware. Sheikyu came up. Master Ning, did you miss this servant? She reached out and stroked Ning Cheng's chest, trying to explore through his lapel. Who knew? Ning Qing suddenly grabbed her neck and pushed her away. Sheikyu was stunned for a moment. Her first reaction was that she was having a nightmare. Ning Qing grabbed her neck and pressed her against the wall before letting go. Coldly he said, "You will answer whatever I ask. If there is any untruth, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." Sheikyu finally realized that she was exposed. She wanted to escape, but unfortunately Ning Cheng's tall body was in front of her. She had no way to escape. Ning Qing took out a dagger and pressed it against Sheikyu's face. Before he could ask, he cut off a piece of Sheikyu's face. Sheikyu screamed in pain. When Ning Cheng's dagger touched her face again, her screams came to an abrupt end. I'll tell you everything. Less than an hour after Ning Qing finished interrogating Shachio, he came out and ordered his attendants in a low voice, "Collect the corpse. That's right, tell Steward Ma that I'll find a better one for eldest Miss Lu when we catch her." At dawn Ning Qing went out. Everyone only knew that he was going to chase Lei, but no one knew how or where he was going to chase her. Lei and the female assassin named Jean did not go far. They were hiding next door to the Lubei Chamber of Commerce's courtyard. The most dangerous place was not the safest place, but at least it was safe for the time being. Lei's arm was injured by an arrow. She mumbled that she wanted to see a doctor, but Jean knocked her out with a palm strike from behind. She then roughly pulled out the arrow, applied some medicine and bandaged the wound. At this time, Lei woke up from her coma. She looked at her bandaged arm and then at Jean, who was resting with her eyes closed. She was stunned for a while before she finally remembered how she fell unconscious. She quietly moved closer to Jin's ear and snarled, "Hua Jin, how dare you plot against me? Do you want to die?" Hua Jin was about to go deaf, but she was very calm. She shifted her position to put some distance between her and Lei before opening her eyes to look at her. Coldly she said, "I'll treat your wound and give you 100 taels for the consultation fee. Remember to pay me back along with the debt for killing Lu Zheng." Her name was Hua Jin. After leaving her family, she became a professional assassin. Her first business deal was with Lei, who had just arrived on the mysterious continent. Lei offered a sky-high price to hire Hua Jin as her personal assassin, but Hua Jin refused. Thus, Lei began to default on her debt. According to Lei, there was no relationship in the world that was more reliable than a debt relationship. As long as she owed Hua Jin money, Hua Jin would never cut ties with her. In order to show her sincerity, Lei took the initiative to tell Hua Jin about her background. Hua Jin, who had never been good at socializing with others, did not know what was wrong with her head. She actually told Lei about her background 2 hours after Lei revealed her identity. As a result, the friendship between the two of them, who knew each other very well, was built and stabilized as Lei went into debt again and again. 100 taels for the consultation fee. Lei's face was full of disbelief. "Hua Jin, you've gone astray." Hua Jin had indeed gone astray. Even the most ignorant person would easily be led astray by Lei. When Lei asked Hua Jin to kill the first person, Hua Jin's price was 10 taels, which was 1,000 times lower than other assassins of the same level. Yesterday, when Lei asked Hua Jin to kill someone, Hua Jin did not ask for a price, but a condition. She wanted Lei to give her 100,000 taels every year. Hua Jin answered seriously, "Jin, I learned it from you." Lei rolled her eyes and stood up with a sigh. 100 taels it is. Anyway, I'll never be able to repay my debt to you. If I'd known this would happen, I would have paid all my debts back then. She had originally wanted to assassinate Lu Zheng and Fei Ma Cheng. Now that her plan had failed, she knew very well that Lu Zheng would cut off all her sources of income. Hua Jin looked at Leilei's dejected expression and wanted to comfort her, but Leilei recovered quickly. She said, "That's fine too. From today onwards I'm no longer Leilei." Lu Zheng had given her the name Leilei. Her real name was Hua Jin, and she had a very noble surname in the mysterious continent. She had secretly found out all this from the information in Lu Zheng's study. She had never wanted to go home and acknowledge her family. She only wanted to be free and do what she liked to do. Earn money. She had planned well. She would kill Lu Zheng and Fei Muqing. Not only would she obtain Lu Zheng's wealth, but she would also be in charge of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. Unfortunately, everything had gone down the drain. She turned to look at Hua Jin and said seriously, "Jin, seeing that I've been reborn and want to be a new person, let's call it quits, okay?" All these years Hua Jin had owed more than 100 million yuan. If anyone else heard this, they would definitely fly into a rage. However, Hua Jin was incomparably calm. She said, "Hua Jin, you still have Lu Xiaoyao. If you don't pay up, I'll kill Lu Xiaoyao's courtesan." Lu Xiaoyao was a brothel that Leilei had privately opened, and Lu Xiaoyao's courtesan was Hua Jin herself. Hua Jin was very clear about this. Hua Jin's expression froze. After a while she forced a smile. "I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. It's only right and proper to repay a debt. Come, let's go to Lu Xiaoyao. I'll sell myself and pay you back." That night Hua Jin took Hua Jin and Hua Jin to hide safely in Lu Xiaoyao. Reality proved that Hua Jin's words were always 30% true and 70% false. Hua Jin's harsh words to her were all false. After Hua Jin returned to Lu Xiaoyao, she ignored countless people who wanted to buy the courtesan knight. Hua Jin also didn't ask her to pay up. Hua Jin spent half a month seducing a big shot. She said excitedly to Hua Jin, "Jin, that idiot Ching still can't find me. I've decided to find him first. This time you don't have to do anything. You can rest on the side." Rest on the side. Why did these words sound so unpleasant? Hua Jin's face darkened. Hua Jin quickly changed her words. No, you can watch the show. Watch the show. Chapter 1334. The headquarters of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce was located in Pingyang City, the largest city in the southern part of the mysterious continent. Lu Xiaoyao was located in Luoxia City, a small city in the northern part of Pingyang City. Lu Xiaoyao was far more famous than this city. Therefore many people came to Luoxia City for Lu Xiaoyao. Over time, Luoxia City was innocently given the nickname of Flower City. Most of the men who came to Luoxia City would be regarded as a womanizer. All of this was due to Shang'er. Women had a better eye for women than men. Shang'er was a perfect example of this saying. All the girls in Lu Xiaoyao were personally selected by her. The most successful thing about Lu Xiaoyao was that they had a top courtesan. This courtesan had been wearing a mask since her debut and had never shown her face. However, she had successfully attracted countless men to go crazy for her and spend a lot of money for her. Not for anything else but because she had superb dancing skills. She didn't need her face to win a man's heart with a dance. That night, Lu Xiaoyao held an auction party called Fated Encounter. He wanted to auction off the real face of the top courtesan in the building. Whoever won the auction would be able to see the true face of the courtesan. At this time, Lu Xiaoyao's round hall was full of people. It was hard to get a ticket for the 10 rows and the seats at the back also cost money. Shang'er had already made a lot of money before the auction of the courtesan's night started. After a song and dance, the singers and dancers dispersed. The high stage was empty. The noisy audience quieted down immediately. Everyone was nervous and excited, waiting for the courtesan to appear. Sure enough, after a short while, a woman with an extremely good figure slowly flew down from the roof while holding a long silk satin hanging from the ceiling. She was wearing a pink gauze dress and her figure was enchanting and graceful. She wore a butterfly-shaped mask that covered her eyes and nose. Only her small cherry mouth could be seen. She was elegant, but her cherry mouth was biting her dark red lips. It was so red that the men present couldn't help but want to pounce on her. As soon as she landed on the stage, the audience went into an uproar. Whistles rose and fell one after another, and many men even directly shouted out their love. Since they had come to a brothel, there would naturally be no men hiding their true colors. Almost all the men present revealed their true colors. However, there was a young master in the front row who only glanced at Hua Kuei before continuing to drink. He seemed to have come for the wine, not the woman. He was naturally Ningqing. Hua Kuei didn't say anything. She only raised her arms slightly and signaled the musician to play the music. As the sound of the zither rang out, everyone present consciously quieted down, and courtesan Yi began to dance. Her curling waist is about to break and her sleeves are about to fly away. The mist is light and red and the wind is like a purple rose. Everyone was mesmerized by the scene. The whole place was so quiet that only the sound of Ningqing pouring wine could be heard. He finished the wine in his cup and casually raised his head to look. Hua Kuei was turning his head and the two pairs of eyes met. After looking at each other for a moment, Hua Kuei looked away in a panic. Ningqing didn't seem to be attracted by her dance either and soon looked away. After the dance, the whole place went into an uproar again. Ningqing was the only one who sat quietly. The bidding began. All kinds of bids rose one after another, and Ningqing didn't make a sound all the time. The bidding went on for a long time. Finally, a burly man stood up from the seat directly behind Ningqing and shouted, 50 million. For a moment the whole place fell silent and no one made a bid for a long time. The brothel keeper was beaming with joy. She went up to the stage and asked, "This gentleman has offered 50 million. Is there anyone else who wants to raise the price?" Not to mention that 50 million wasn't a small number, just the background of this burly man was enough to make many people feel intimidated. In the mysterious continent, money couldn't solve everything. Real ability was the way to go. Many businesses had powerful forces behind them. Otherwise, no matter how much money they had, they wouldn't be able to stand firm in business. This burly man was none other than Ba Tu, one of the 3 generals under Miss Han of the Wolf sect. As soon as he stood up, several people who could afford to raise the price shrank back. Therefore Hua Kuei's fate was won by Ba Tu at the sky-high price of 50 million. Hua Kuei went back first. Ba Tu drank a few mouthfuls of wine, tidied his beard, and went upstairs with the maidservant who led the way. Everyone present was disappointed. Some left while others stayed to have fun. Ningqing went upstairs and found a room. He didn't ask the maidservants to accompany him and only asked them to send wine. At this time Shang-er was waiting in the room. The brothel keeper hurried in. "Master, Ba Tu is stopped by several maidservants. You must act quickly." Young Master Qing entered the second room on the second floor. "He's alone." Shang was overjoyed. She deliberately spread the news to let Ningqing know that she was hiding in Lu Xiaoyao as Hua Kuei's maidservant. As expected, Ningqing came to find her. She had been paying attention to him on the stage just now. She noticed that he was sizing up the masked maidservants below the stage while drinking. This guy would never know that she was the famous Lu Xiaoyao's #1. After the brothel keeper left, Shang-er hurriedly called Hua Jin out. She said seriously, "Success or failure depends on one move. You can't just watch the show and ignore me. You must protect me. If you don't go now, Ba Tu will come." Hua Jin whispered. Shang-er went out happily. After killing Ningqing, she would slowly deal with Lu Zheng. Ningqing waited in the room but the wine was still not delivered. Just as he was about to call for someone, the door was pushed open. He was quite surprised that it was Hua Kuei who walked in and not the maidservant who delivered the wine. "Young master, the snow maiden red you asked for is here." Under the mask, Shang-er's smile was especially beautiful. She had used the voice-changing technique, so her voice was soft and gentle, unlike her usual sharp tongue. Ningqing was slightly stunned. He had already asked Xiaoqiu about Lu Xiaoyao's background. One must know that many of the maidservants in Lu Xiaoyao were slaves like Xiaoqiu. They usually had private dealings with each other. Of course, Ningqing knew that Lu Xiaoyao's Hua Kuei was Lulu herself. Therefore, when he received the news that Lulu was hiding in Lu Xiaoyao as a maidservant, he immediately concluded that it was Lulu who spread the news. Lulu wanted to lure him over and catch a turtle in a jar. He knew that Lulu was in Lu Xiaoyao but didn't make a move because he was interested in Lu Xiaoyao's business. He was planning how to force Lu Xiaoyao into a desperate situation and then slowly deal with Lulu, who knew that Lulu didn't obediently hide and actually dared to take the initiative to seduce him. When he came, he also knew that there was a trap in this auction. However, he never expected that Ba Tu of the Wolf sect would appear. He also didn't expect that Batu would be infatuated with Lulu and bid for the fate of one time. He still couldn't figure out whether Batu's appearance was an accident or Lulu had already arranged it. He naturally wouldn't find someone to deal with Batu's day. After all, Batu was a follower of the wolf sex Miss Han. His strength was not ordinary. Even if he brought 3 people with him today, they might not be able to defeat this guy. Moreover, if he offended the wolf clan because of Lulu, the Lubei Merchant Guild would also be in trouble. He had already given up. He just wanted to sit for a while and observe the situation. He wanted to find out what the relationship between Batu and Lulu was. He didn't expect that Lulu would come to him at this time. At this time she should be serving Batu's day. Ningqing seemed to understand something and suddenly laughed. Fe was puzzled. Although she felt a little uneasy, she still calmed down and asked, "Young master, what are you laughing at? This servant came personally to deliver the wine. Could it be that you don't like it?" She had already arranged for Batu to be in her room. If they couldn't find him, the procuress would bring Batu here. In a moment she would hug Ningqing. Batu would naturally misunderstand and spare Ningqing. She dared to guarantee that with Batu's fiery temper, Ningqing would undoubtedly die. Shang-Er approached and was about to sit down when Ningqing suddenly pulled her into his arms and encircled her. He asked, "Miss, you've come to the wrong door. I can't fork out 50 million taels of silver. I wasn't the one who bid just now." At this point Shang-Er's state of mind felt more and more uneasy. However, Ningqing continued, "How about this? Call your maidservants over and I'll let you go. How about it?" Shang-Er was delighted, secretly laughing that this big idiot was indeed here for her. She said, "If young master doesn't let go of me, how can I call them over?" Ningqing said, "Since you've come to the wrong door, there's no harm in accompanying me for a while." As he spoke, his large hand moved towards Shang-Er's thigh. Shang-Er's eyes narrowed as she thought to herself, Shaikyu was right. This guy looks like he's not interested in women, but he's actually a big pervert. She pretended to be timid and said softly, "Young master, don't be like this, don't." Ningqing ignored her. His large hand covered her thigh, caressing down inch by inch. Shang-Er resisted while secretly laughing. It was better for Ah Qing to take the initiative. If Batu saw this later, he would definitely be angrier than she expected. The angrier Batu was, the faster Ah Qing would die. Unexpectedly, Ningqing suddenly pulled out a well-hidden dagger from her calf. He opened the dagger and casually raised it, cutting through her butterfly-shaped mask. Heavens! Shang-Er only just realized that this guy knew martial arts, and his martial arts weren't bad at all. "Layla, your godfather misses you. Go." Before Shang-Er could react, Ningqing knocked her out with a palm strike. Hua Jin, who was hiding outside, heard the commotion and immediately broke through the door without caring that Batu hadn't arrived yet. Unexpectedly, what awaited her were 3 assassins. Ah Qing carried the unconscious Shang-Er and broke through the window at the back. Hua Jin could tell that the 3 assassins outside the door weren't any weaker than her. She turned and ran without hesitation, avoiding the 3 assassins and chasing after Ah Qing from another direction. The 3 assassins weren't easy to deal with and immediately chased after her. Batu only arrived after everyone had left. He rushed into the room, but there was no one in sight. "Where is she?" he shouted at the madam. The madam was stunned. Where was Master Hua? Where was Ah Qing? Batu suddenly grabbed the madam's collar and roared, "How dare you lie to me? Hand him over or I'll burn Lu Xiaoyao to ashes." The madam naturally didn't dare to tell the truth, but she couldn't find Master Hua anywhere. Thus both the madam and Lu Xiaoyao met with tragedy. Hua Jin was entangled by the 3 assassins and couldn't catch up with Ah Qing. When Ah Qing brought Shang-Er back to Lubei Chamber of Commerce, it was already the next night. When Shang-Er woke up, the first thing she saw was Ah Qing guarding the bed. She looked around and found herself in Lubei Chamber of Commerce's boudoir. Although she was panicking, she still forced a smile and said with a chuckle, "Ah Qing, I thought you'd already handed me over to my godfather. Why, you can't bear to." Chapter 1335. Lei had been with Lu Zheng for so many years and knew Lu Zheng's temper better than anyone else in the Lubei Chamber of Commerce. Of course, she knew it better than Ningqing. She knew that once she fell into Lu Zheng's hands, it wouldn't be as simple as death. After all, she wasn't Lu Zheng's biological daughter. She was so flustered that she didn't know why she forced a smile. Perhaps she didn't want to show weakness in front of this man. Ever since he entered the Lubei Chamber of Commerce and gained Lu Zheng's recognition, she had been at odds with him. And from the moment Lu Zheng wanted her to marry him, she had officially started fighting with him. Although she was a woman, she had never lost to any man. Lubei Chamber of Commerce was full of men and many of them wanted to marry her, but she had trampled them all. Only this man in front of her didn't trample her back, but had trampled her several times. This time he had really trampled her underfoot. She admitted that she had lost, but so what? She didn't want him to see her as a joke. If you can't bear to, then marry me. Let's kill Lu Jing together and divide his treasures. How about that? Shang'er asked with a smile. Ning Qing said, it'll be more interesting to see your godfather when you wake up. These words were like a lynching sentence for Shang'er. She was completely flustered and froze on the bed, unable to move. Ning Qing got up and called for the guards. Cold, he instructed, tie her up and send her to the boss's courtyard. He had already walked to the door but turned back to look. It had to be said that at this moment Shang'er, who had always been clear-headed, had an illusion that Ah Qing seemed to be regretting it and was going to let her go. Who knew that Ning Qing would only say cold, oh right, I forgot to tell you. Lu Xiaoyao was burned by Ba Tuesday. Your assassin is surrounded by many people and probably won't be able to make it. After Ning Qing finished speaking, he turned and left without hesitation. Shang'er was stunned and lost all her strength. When Shang'er was escorted to Lu Zheng's room by the guards, she saw Ah Qing standing by the door, playing with two specially shaped keys in his hands. She had already lost all her strength, but seeing this scene she burned with anger and all her strength came back. She wanted to pounce on Ah Qing and bite him. Despicable. Damn it. The guards threw her to the ground. After a while Lu Jing finally walked out. Shang'er lowered her head, not daring to look at him. She knew that at this time she could only be obedient. Otherwise she would die even more miserably. Lu Jing was as silent as he had been that night. The only difference was that there were no more tears in his eyes. He looked down at Shang'er and asked coldly, why? Shang'er remained silent. Lele, hasn't old man treated you well enough? Old man can give you everything you want. Why are you doing this? Lu Jing said angrily. Shang'er remained silent. Lu Jing suddenly walked over and ruthlessly kicked her shoulder, causing her to fall to the ground. Ungrateful bastard. After so many years the old man might as well raise a dog. Finally this guy completely infuriated Shang'er. She raised her head and said word by word, Boss Lu, adopting a child that you abducted is not called kindness, it's called hypocrisy. Lu Zheng was shocked. Lele, I'm not called Lele. I'm called Shang'er. Shang'er said angrily, I've seen all your slave contracts. Lu Zheng looked at Shang'er, his eyes ferocious. He was silent for a long time before he finally said, then you deserve to die. A complicated look flashed past Ning Cheng's eyes. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Zheng said, Steward Ma, I'll leave it to you. Shang'er was shocked. In an instant cold sweat broke out and drenched her back. Steward Ma was a notorious lecher in Lu Bei Chamber of Commerce. Any female death row prisoner who fell into his hands would be humiliated. No, Shang'er subconsciously looked at Ning Cheng. Her beautiful phoenix eyes were filled with fear and pleading. Yes, he hated him the most. But at this moment she was begging him. She was begging him silently. She could only beg him. Ning Qing looked at her for a moment before he heartlessly looked away. Shang'er's eyes immediately turned red. She didn't know why, but she suddenly didn't panic. He said she felt terrible. Her heart felt like it was being pressed down by something. It was so uncomfortable that she couldn't breathe. It was as if she couldn't accept it and as if she was disappointed. Steward Ma was overjoyed. If not for Lu Zheng's emotions he would have laughed out loud. Never in his wildest dreams did he think that he would one day get Miss Lu. He could laugh even in his wildest dreams. Master, don't worry. Those who betray you, I will make sure they suffer a fate worse than death. Steward Ma strode forward, lifted Shang'er onto his shoulder and took her away. Shang'er looked up and saw Lu Jing turning to enter the house. She also saw Ah Qing following him in. She never cried. Even if it was an act, she wouldn't shed tears. But as soon as she saw Ning Cheng's figure disappear behind the door, bean-sized tears fell from her eyes without a sound. Ning Qing stayed in Lu Zheng's room for a long time before he came out. He slowly left Lu Zheng's courtyard, But the moment he stepped out of the courtyard, he ran towards Steward Ma's house. With a loud bang, he kicked open Steward Ma's door. He saw Shang'er wrapped in the bedding like a frightened little beast curled up in the bed. Housekeeper Ma had taken off his clothes and was only left with a pair of underpants. He stood in front of the bed, his whole body covered in scratches. It could be said that he was covered in cuts and bruises and was bleeding non-stop. Ning Qing was stunned. When Steward Ma saw Ning Qing enter, he was also stunned. Ning Qing immediately closed the door. Seeing this, Steward Ma was even more puzzled. "Master Qing, do you have something else?" Ning Qing said, "Looks like a little wild cat. It's not easy to tame." Steward Ma was a smart person. When he heard Ning Qing's words, he more or less guessed what Ning Qing meant. He quickly put on his clothes and said with a smile, "Master Qing, it's too fierce. I can't tame it. You should do it." Before Ning Qing could speak, Steward Ma said, "Don't worry. As long as that person is killed before sunrise tomorrow, boss won't know anything." Ning Qing casually threw a key to Steward Ma and said in a low voice, "Half of Liu Bei's silver is yours." Steward Ma was overwhelmed by the favor and didn't know what to say for a moment. He practically snatched the keys away from her. This action let Ning Qing know that his judgment was right. If he wanted to completely bribe this Steward Ma, it would definitely be dangerous if he didn't put in a lot of effort. Steward Ma neatly dressed himself and went out. Meanwhile, Shang'er, who had witnessed the transaction, was still curled up motionlessly with a face full of fear. Seeing her like that, Ning Qing couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "I thought you had a lot of guts, but you're just like this." Shang'er still didn't make a sound and looked at him in horror. Ning Qing leaned closer and was about to ask her if she had seen Jin Zi's file. Who knew that Shang'er would suddenly reach out and ruthlessly scratch a wound on the back of his hand. Ning Qing didn't expect this and retreated. He suddenly shouted, "Are you done pretending? If you don't want to die, then come down." Shang'er didn't move and stared at Ning Qing with a face full of hatred. If her gaze was like a sharp arrow, Ning Qing would be riddled with holes. "I'll give you one last chance. If you don't come down and talk properly, I'll immediately call the one surnamed Ma back." Ning Qing's patience was limited. This was the first time he was scratched by a woman. The word Ma frightened Shang'er. While staring at Ning Qing, she carefully moved to the side of the bed and stretched out her feet. Her bare feet and ankles were especially beautiful. Ning Qing glanced at it and immediately looked away. After Shang'er got off the bed, he looked over again and was shocked. Only then did he realize that Shang'er was completely naked. When she curled up, the small silk blanket could still cover her. When she stood up, it could only wrap around her body. Her slender legs and well-proportioned arms were all exposed. Ning Qing glanced to the side and saw the shredded robes on the ground. His gaze lingered on the pile of clothes and he unconsciously frowned. Suddenly Shang'er scolded, "Ah Qing, you bastard! If you have the guts to kill me, are you still a man? How can you humiliate me like this? If you want to kill me, I won't complain. I've lost. But if you humiliate me like this, I'll look down on you." Ning Qing turned to look and saw that Shang'er's face was already covered in tears. He was in a daze and suddenly turned to leave. Shang'er didn't dare to go out and could only wait. She sat for a while and rummaged through the drawers to find clothes. She found Butler Ma's clothes and changed into them. She sat on the bed and waited for Ning Qing. Gradually she calmed down. She couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if Ning Qing had been a step too late. After a while, Ning Qing came back with a bag of things and threw it at Shang'er's feet. Shang'er glanced at him and asked, "What is it?" Ning Qing didn't say anything, so Shang'er kicked it open. When she saw what was inside, she almost screamed. That was Butler Ma's head. Ning Qing lowered his head and was silent. He said mildly, "Sorry I'm late. You can go." Shang'er stood up and looked at Ning Qing and then at the head on the ground. She suddenly understood and exclaimed, "Hey, go. We'll call it even in the future," Ning Qing said coldly. Shang'er rushed in front of him and pushed him, saying loudly, "I'm innocent. I wasn't. I'm innocent. Do you understand?" She didn't know how to explain. Did this guy misunderstand that Butler Ma had really done something to her, so he chopped off Butler Ma's head as an apology? Ning Qing had indeed misunderstood. He wanted to kill Shang'er, but he didn't want to humiliate a woman like this. He couldn't approve of Lu Zheng's way of doing things. He wanted to save Shang'er from Butler Ma so that he could threaten her to reveal Jin Zi's identity. Since she had seen his identity, she must have seen Jin Zi. He didn't expect Butler Ma to act so quickly. He had to admit that when he misunderstood that Shang'er was being bullied, he was at a loss. Now he looked at Shang'er and finally realized his impulsiveness. He would be in trouble if he killed Butler Ma. Shang'er looked at Ning Qing in disbelief and muttered, "Ah Qing, I didn't expect you to be a good person." Ning Qing came back to his senses and exhaled. He couldn't be bothered to explain further and said coldly, "Let me ask you a question." Shang'er smiled. Her tears were still wet, but she smiled brightly and said, "I'll answer you if you promise to let me go." Chapter 1336. At first, Shang'er thought that Ah Qing had found his conscience and wanted to save her. She didn't expect that he had a favor to ask of her. She had to admit that she felt a little guilty after being saved by Ah Qing. However, when she heard that Ah Qing had a question to ask, she felt a lot more relaxed. Since this guy had a favor to ask of her, of course she had to seek the greatest benefit for herself. "As long as you give me the answer I want, I'll let you go." Ning Qing was very straightforward. "What's the question? Let's hear it first." Shang'er chuckled. "You've read all of Lu Zheng's secret files?" Ning Qing asked seriously. Shang'er looked at him meaningfully and suddenly exclaimed, "Okay. Ah Qing, so you're here for those secret files. Weren't sold by Lu Zheng before, were you?" "Answer my question." Ning Qing said unhappily. "Yes, I've read all of them." Shang'er answered honestly. "You remember all of them?" Ning Qing asked again. Shang'er smiled but didn't say anything. The secret files of the slaves that Lu Zheng personally controlled were top secret. The few people who were bought and sold all had great backgrounds. Of course she remembered all of them. "What are you laughing at?" Ning Qing asked coldly. Shang'er glanced at the person beside her and suddenly became serious. "Ah Qing, answer my question honestly. How about it? Speak." Ning Qing's patience was running out. Shang'er walked closer and stood on her tiptoes to whisper in his ear. "Ah Qing, don't tell me you've really fallen for me? After killing Butler Ma, you won't be able to stay by Lu Zheng's side anymore." Ning Qing was stunned at first, then he sneered. "You're thinking too much." Shang'er seemed unwilling to give up and said, "Lu Zheng has a total of 5 secret files. Other than mine, if any of the remaining 4 are made public, Lu Zheng will die without a burial place. Do you think that you can hide the fact that you killed Butler Ma from him? This should be the reason why Lu Zheng wanted to kill her so quickly. Otherwise, with Lu Zheng's personality, he would have at least asked Butler Ma to torture her for a while before killing her. If she guessed correctly, Lu Zheng would definitely ask Steward Ma to personally deliver her corpse tomorrow." Shang'er originally thought that Ning Qing would be very shocked, but Ning Qing was not. He was still cold and stern as he asked, "Your Jiner? What's your surname? Where is your family?" He had long known that gold came from the Black Forest. Therefore he had long guessed that the secret files in Lu Zheng's hands were not simple. It was troublesome to kill Steward Ma, but it was not as serious as Shang'er said. The years he spent in Lubei Chamber of Commerce were not for nothing. Shang'er avoided Ning Cheng's question and asked again, "Are you really not afraid of the consequences? Are you going to answer my question or not?" Ning Qing lowered his voice. "Answer my question first." Shang'er chuckled, not looking serious at all. Unexpectedly, Ning Qing suddenly pulled out a dagger and pressed it against her face. Coldly, he said, "Either you die or answer me. Since you want to kill me, why save me?" Shang'er was not afraid. Ning Qing snorted lightly, "It seems that you've misunderstood. I save you from Steward Ma and you answer my question. This is a business deal. Whether I kill you or not is another business deal. These are 2 different things, understand?" Shang'er finally understood Ning Cheng's meaning. She asked angrily, "What right do you have to kill me?" "What, only you're allowed to take my life, but I'm not allowed to kill you." Ning Qing said coldly. Only the 2 of them could treat life and death as a business deal. There were reasons and conditions. "You spoiled my plans, so it's only right that I kill you." Shang'er said angrily, "If you didn't sneak in, Lu Zheng would be in Great Qin's prison by now. I don't need to follow him to Mysterious Sky either. I hate this place." Seeing that Ning Qing did not speak, Shang'er continued, "I've been a slave since I was 3 and have followed Lu Zheng for more than 20 years. I'm about to kill him, so what right do you have to sneak in? What right do you have to take away Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce? Do you know how much money Lu Zheng has in his treasury that I helped him earn by showing up in public? Shang'er glared at Ningqing angrily. There were many things that she did not plan to say. Even to Hua Jin she would not say them. Lu Zheng was able to have so much power in Winter Crow Kingdom because she had suffered countless losses and grievances to curry favor with the Winter Crow royal family. Women were always more suited to business deals than men because there were many men who wanted to take advantage of women in the business world. In the end, women would always take advantage of them. What kind of person was Lu Zheng? If she did not have true ability, how could she have won Lu Zheng's favor? No one knew that Lu Zheng had wanted her to marry Winter Crow Kingdom's king for business. He had also wanted her to marry Winter Crow Kingdom's slave nobles. She had paid a heavy price to clinch the business deal and protect herself. Lu Zheng saw her true ability and saw that he had no successor, so he gradually doted on and protected her like his own daughter. Perhaps Lu Zheng was old and had forgotten the past. However, she had grown up and understood more, so her hatred had deepened. He did not want to be pitiful. She would rather be a heinous villain with the crime of being ungrateful and killing her foster father than be pitted by others. She did not know why she suddenly told Ningqing the truth. Seeing that Ningqing was still staring at her without speaking, she was a little embarrassed. "Why are you looking at me? Don't look." She hated other people's sympathy, especially him, her opponent. But Ningqing didn't pity her at all. Instead, he gave her a disdainful look and said, "I don't care what grudges you have with Yu Zheng. If you don't have the skills, then admit defeat obediently. I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to die or do you want to answer my question?" Shang'er narrowed her eyes and answered without hesitation, "I choose to die." She refused to believe that Ningqing wouldn't realize that he'd lost the negotiation from the start with such a lucrative business deal. Since he wanted to know the answer, he was destined to be controlled by her. If she died, who was going to answer his question? She lifted her chin and looked up, looking as if she was unafraid of death. She was much shorter than Ningqing. No matter how high she lifted her chin, Ningqing would still look down on her. Ningqing looked at her disdainfully and snorted contemptuously. He said, "Shang'er, do you think I have to ask you? Since I dared to kill Butler Ma, I'm not afraid of trouble. If you don't answer me, I'll ask Lu Zheng." Shang'er was stunned. What did this guy mean? Although she was a little uneasy, she still maintained a righteous and fearless attitude. She continued to close her eyes and look up. However, she heard Ningqing sigh softly. "I originally planned to wait a few days and figure out Lu Zheng's background before making a move. But now it doesn't matter. It doesn't make much of a difference whether I kill him now or later." As soon as he said this, Shang'er immediately opened her eyes and exclaimed, "You have a way to kill Lu Zheng?" Ningqing did not answer. Instead, he held the dagger in his hand and stabbed at Shang'er. Spare me." Shang'er was scared out of her wits and cried out. Ningqing's dagger barely grazed her ear before landing right next to it. It didn't hurt her at all. Shang'er was still scared out of her wits. She closed her eyes and screamed non-stop. Ningqing was helpless. He could only cover her mouth and say in a low voice, "Enough. I know how afraid you are of death." Shang'er secretly opened her eyes to look at his cold and handsome face. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. How embarrassing. Ningqing let go of her mouth and asked straightforwardly, "Is there anyone from the Black Forest in the secret files?" Shang'er was incomparably shocked. You're actually Ling Gu. It's really the Ling family." Ningqing was also shocked. He had heard that the Ling family in the Black Forest was the only family that could tame tigers. However, this was only hearsay. When it came to Jinzi's background, he would not easily believe it unless there was certain information. More than 20 years ago, the Ling family, the master of the Black Forest, lost a baby boy. It was Lu Zheng who personally stole him. Shang'er said seriously. Ningqing was deeply moved. No wonder when he saw Jinzi for the first time at the three-way black market, he felt that the kid was not simple. Who would have thought that he was not simple at all? He was extremely complicated. "What's Lu Zheng's background?" Ningqing asked again. Shang'er shrugged. "I don't know either." "What's your background then?" Ningqing asked again. Shang'er smiled. "I don't have any background. Otherwise, would I have fallen into your hands? If you don't have any background, would Lu Zheng still keep you by his side?" Ningqing asked again. When I was young I was innocent and cute. Everyone loved me and flowers bloomed when they saw me. Anyone who saw me wanted to take me home and raise me as their daughter. Shang'er answered without any shame. Ningqing said, we're even now. You can scram now. Shang'er said seriously, you really don't want to kill me anymore? I don't kill women. Scram now. Ningqing said coldly. Not only did Shang'er not leave, she even held onto his hand with a fawning expression. How do you plan to kill Lu Zheng? Do you want me to help you? Ningqing broke free. No need. Then I'll stay and help you with your business. Shang'er continued to ask. Are you scramming or not? Ningqing turned around and glared at her coldly. Shang'er did not give up and continued to pester him. I can do anything. I can serve in the hall, cook in the kitchen and even warm the bed. Ningqing actually nodded. All right. 10 taels of silver a month. If you have a child, another 10 taels. You can stay if you want. Shang'er immediately let go of his hand. She did not even look at Ningqing and turned to leave. She was just about to leave when Ningqing stopped her. Jump out of the window on the right. Someone will pick you up. Scram as far as you can. Before Shang'er jumped out of the window, she deliberately turned around and said word by word, stingy. Shang'er was sent to Luoxia City. Soon the assassins who surrounded Hua Jin also dispersed and told Hua Jin that Shang'er was in Luoxia City. When Hua Jin found Shang'er, she was dressed as a man and standing in the brothel opposite Lu Xiaoyao, looking at the ruins of her efforts. Are you all right? Hua Jin asked with concern. Shang'er turned around and the first thing she said was, Jin, you didn't protect me well. How are you going to settle this? Hua Jin was stunned. Before she could answer, Shang'er said, since we've been sisters for so many years, how about this? We'll cancel out this debt with the debt from before. Hua Jin was originally worried that Shang'er would be sad to see Lu Xiaoyao in ruins. Now that she saw that Shang'er was still willing to settle the debt, she was relieved. He said, wake up. I didn't take your bodyguard's money. I have no obligation to protect you. Finally, Shang'er drooped her head in disappointment. Lu Xiaoyao is gone. I have nothing left. Hua Jin said, take out the secret files you know and buy them. Selling one copy will be enough for you to eat for the rest of your life. No. Once those files are leaked, Qing and everyone in the Lubei Chamber of Commerce will die. Shang'er was very serious, even stern. Hua Jin was curious. Haven't you always wanted to kill Qing? Chapter 1337. Shang'er thought for a while before answering Hua Jin. She said, I don't want to kill him now. Hua Jin looked at her in disbelief. Shang'er snickered and immediately told Hua Jin everything that happened at the Lubei enterprise. How can you still laugh? If he's late, your life will be over, Hua Jin said very seriously. If he's late, I'll leave a blood letter and bang my head against the wall, Shang'er said. What blood letter did you leave? Hua Jin asked curiously. Shang'er seemed to have thought about this question long ago. She said, I want him to collect my corpse. Otherwise, I'll haunt him even if I become a ghost. This way he won't forget me for the rest of his life. Hua Jin raised her eyebrows and looked at her. She had a deeper understanding of this girl's viciousness. Hey, you're really not going home to acknowledge your family? Hua Jin was very serious. Shang'er was indifferent. There's no place for me if I go back. Besides, I'm not done with Qing. Initially, Lu Zheng wanted to kidnap and sell her extremely talented sister, not her. Who knew that he would kidnap and sell her instead? This information was recorded in detail in Lu Zheng's files. She felt that Lu Zheng must have intended to use those records, but she was not sure what they were for. Shenkong was a world where martial arts were the most important. In large families, the direct descendants were not important. What was important was talent. A good-for-nothing like her would only be asking for trouble if she went back. She knew which family she came from, but she had never found out anything about that family. She had already steeled her heart to not acknowledge them. Didn't you settle the score with him? Do you still want to go back to court death? Since he has the ability to deal with Lu Zheng, what can you threaten him with? Hua Jin asked. I don't care. I must have a share of the silver from the Lubei enterprise. Shang'er's eyes slowly turned from one side to the other. No one knew what kind of evil idea she was hatching. She knew that Qing would definitely deal with Lu Zheng during this period. No matter what, she had to interfere. Otherwise, she would have no reason to share the silver from the Liu Bei enterprise with him in the future. That night, Shang'er tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Early the next morning, she pulled Hua Jin up and accompanied her back to Pingyang City. Ning Qing had indeed taken action. On the night Shang'er was sent out of Pingyang City, he took action. Steward Ma was dead, and Lu Jing wanted to see Steward Ma the next morning. If he wanted to see Steward Ma's corpse, he couldn't hide it no matter how hard he tried. Thus he killed Lu Jing that very night. Using the excuse of discussing important matters with Yu Zheng, he stayed in Yu Zheng's room until late at night. When his dagger pierced Lu Zheng's heart, Lu Zheng's guards were watching from the side. They didn't even have time to step forward before they were killed. Actually, he had Shang'er to thank. If Shang'er hadn't escaped and Lu Zheng hadn't handed the task of killing Shang'er to him, he definitely wouldn't have had the opportunity to directly come into contact with a professional hitman so quickly. He gave the key to Steward Ma to Xiong Fei, the assassin group hired by Lu Zheng, and signed a contract with Xiong Fei. As long as Xiong Fei helped him kill Yu Zheng, he would become the second in command of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. Not only would he act as a bodyguard for the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce, he would also enjoy half of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce's wealth. Such a huge temptation was not something any employer could afford. Xiong Fei immediately agreed. Ning Qing was a businessman, so he would never do business at a loss. Giving half of his wealth to Xiong Fei was definitely not as simple as killing Yu Zheng. Having been in Shenkong for many years, he had always known that if he wanted to gain a foothold in Shenkong, he needed the protection of martial strength. He was working with Xiong Fei to pave the way for the future. Perhaps Xiong Fei's assassin group was not the best choice, but at least for now, it was the best choice among the forces he could come into contact with. The day after Yu Zheng's death, Ning Qing announced to the entire Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce that Yu Zheng had died of illness. The smart people naturally understood what was going on, while the unintelligent people would naturally raise objections. In the face of this situation, Ning Cheng's methods gave everyone a fright. One had to know that he had used the matter of finding Shang'er to get rid of Shang'er's henchmen. 2/3 of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce were his people, while the remaining 1/3 were Lu Zheng's trusted aides. Among this 1/3 of the trusted aides, excluding those who were smart enough to surrender, there were only 10 or so people who did not know how to adapt to the circumstances. Ning Qing actually used another day to lay out all the evidence of corruption since the 10 or so people had entered the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. This move not only prevented the 10 or so people from taking any money, but they also had to fill in the evidence of corruption before they could leave. If they could not fill in the evidence, they could only continue to earn money for the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce. This move not only dealt with the 10 or so people who objected, but also sounded a particularly loud alarm to the others. All along, the people in the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce knew that Ning Qing was powerful and respected him greatly. However, after this incident, everyone not only respected him but also revered him. The Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce changed owners in less than 3 days. From an outsider's point of view, it was as if nothing had happened and everything was calm. So much so that Shang'er only heard the news of Yu Zheng's death when she returned to Pingyang City. She looked at the tightly shut door of the Liu Bei Chamber of Commerce and was stunned. After a while she muttered, "His actions are too fast." Hua Jin walked out from the shadows and reminded her seriously, "Shang'er, don't provoke that man." Shang'er said, "If I don't provoke him, I'll feel uncomfortable all over." In the past this feeling was not so strong. Now that she knew that Ah Qing had hidden it so well, she wanted to provoke him even more. Why was it like this? Shang'er could not explain it. She turned back to look at Hua Jin and asked, "Jin, am I courting death?" Hua Jin answered her expressionlessly, "You're asking for it." Shang'er was not angry at all. She even nodded seriously. "That's right." With that she suddenly quieted down. Her usual foppish expression also softened. After a while she spoke again. "Jin, I've heard a saying before." Hua Jin was curious. There were not many words that Shang'er approved of. Unexpectedly Shang'er said, "Liking someone is asking for it." The corner of Hua Jin's mouth twitched. She did not know how to answer. She did not understand love at all. She looked at Shang'er for a long time before asking a particularly profound question. "Shang'er, you can't get the money, so you want the person?" Shang'er thought for a while and laughed. "I've given the best time to Liu Bei Trade Union. I can't lose both the person and the money, right?" Huajin, bring me in. If I succeed, I'll be able to pay you back. Huajin could not send Shang'er in at all. After Ningqing took over Lubei Trade Union, the first thing he did was to get Xiong Fei to find a group of top assassins to guard the headquarters of Lubei Trade Union. Xiong Fei himself was to protect him. Huajin escaped, but Shang'er was thrown out. She fell at the door and was in so much pain that she could not straighten her back. At this moment, Ningqing was doing a final search of Lu Zheng's room. He had already found the secret files Shang'er had mentioned, but found that there were only 4 of them. Shang'er's files were gone. He guessed that Shang'er must have taken his files when she snuck in to kill Lu Zheng that night. Of the other 4 files, one was indeed Jin Zi's. Ningqing kept Jin Zi's file close to his body and destroyed the other 3. He could not afford to provoke those powers. Once those files were leaked, the Lubei Trade Union and he would disappear from the mysterious continent overnight. As for Jin Zi's files, he planned to find someone he could trust after he was done with his work and send them to Northern Li across the Ice Sea. After a final search, Ningqing still could not find any information about Lu Zheng's origins. He had always hoped that Lu Zheng would contact his original family so that he could find some clues. Now he hoped that Lu Zheng would completely cut off all contact with his original family. Otherwise he would be in trouble if Lu Zheng's clansmen came knocking on his door. Hope was hope, but Ningqing was not one to take risks. He was already considering how to hand over the Lubei Trade Union to someone powerful and retreat unscathed so that no one would be able to find this Cheng. After all, he hadn't joined the Lubei Trade Union for money, but for Jin Zi's origins. Now that the truth was out, he couldn't be bothered with so many miscellaneous matters. There were wineries everywhere on the mysterious continent. There was no place for Long Fei Yi to spy on, so he could do as he pleased. He hadn't allowed the Lubei Trade Union to enter the winery industry all these years because he wanted to leave a way out for himself. He'd even found a place to open a winery. Xiong Fei came over when Ningqing walked out of the door. Guess who's at the door, Cheng? Who? Ningqing was confused. Shang'er, that Miss Lu from before, Xiong Fei said seriously. Don't let her in, Ningqing ordered coldly. But an hour later, just as Ningqing was about to go to bed, Shang'er came in and walked all the way to his door. She pounded on the door. Cheng, open the door. I just want to ask you one thing. Do you want our child or not? If you don't want it, I'll go get an abortion. Yes, Shang'er was yelling at the door, asking Ningqing if he wanted a child. Whether it was the guards at the door or those in the dark, they were all frightened. After all, Lu Zheng had been trying to matchmake the 2 of them for so many years and they'd often bickered. No one knew the real relationship between them. Some people said that they were only at peace on the surface but fought to the death in private. Some said that they were only at peace on the surface, but fought fiercely in private. Others said that Cheng wanted to marry her but Lulu didn't, so they became enemies. Some even said that Lulu had delivered herself to Cheng's door, so she was already Cheng's woman. In short, there were many different opinions. Even Xiong Fei and his assassins didn't know the truth. They only knew that Cheng had saved Shang'er from Steward Ma. No matter what, Cheng still had some affection for Shang'er. As a result, as soon as Shang'er said she was pregnant, everyone thought that Cheng and Shang'er had once been together before falling apart. Shang'er had run out of options, so she used the child to threaten him. After all, it involved Cheng's own flesh and blood. Who would be careless? They could only let Shang'er in. When Ningqing heard Shang'er's nonsense, his head ached. He rubbed his temples as he went to open the door. As soon as the door opened, Shang'er fell silent while the onlookers all hid. Shang'er smiled at him ingratiatingly, but Ningqing pulled her into the room and slammed the door shut. Mo Yojiao, Ningqing will be involved in the promise of 10 years later, while Northman's ending will be in the novel. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.